Hey guys, so I have this interview I did with my good friend Bobby Hundreds a couple months ago, but I wanted to drop it today, even though I'm doing the New York part of my life in chronological order as everything else I've been doing. I feel like it's important to drop his episode today, as he has a book out right now, an incredible book. It's called "This Is Not a T-Shirt," and it's an incredible book. He's an incredible human, big part of my life, big part of H2O's life, and just a really good friend of mine. So I thought it was important I dropped this episode today. Yeah, my voice kind of a little raspy. Played New Jersey on Friday, incredible show in Asbury Park. And then we played the Warped Tour yesterday in the blazing hot sun, and then got off stage and went straight to the airport, and got home really late last night. So I'm home for 4 days, and I go to Europe on Friday. So just trying to get all these episodes together for the next couple weeks. So yeah, this is important for me to drop this today. Hope you guys enjoy this interview. This guy's a very intelligent, wonderful human, Mr. Bobby Hundreds. Enjoy, guys. Today, my special guest is sitting in my kitchen, a person I've known for a very long time. We'll get down to that relationship on this episode. So welcome to the podcast, my good friend, Bobby Hundreds.
It is I.
You're filming me? Okay, so welcome to the podcast, Bobby. I appreciate your time. I know you're a very busy man. We're gonna go back in time first to get you where you are now. So I know you were born in Riverside, California. Is that correct?
That's absolutely incorrect, Toby.
So where in California were you born?
I was not born in California. I was born in Maryland. Did you know this?
Bullshit.
DMV. I was born in Maryland. I was born in
I got wrong information.
Ellicott City, Maryland. I was only there for a couple years. So that's why.
Do people think you're born in Cali, though?
Yeah, of course, because we're like a California-based brand, and I'm LA-based. But
I did not know that.
Was born on the East Coast in Maryland, and then my family moved to Orange County, and then we moved to Riverside, and so Riverside is technically my hometown, but I grew up. I grew up in Riverside.
What were you doing? What were you guys doing in Maryland?
I don't know. I've heard many different things. I do know that in the 70s when Asians started immigrating to America, because up until, I don't want to get into too much political stuff, or we can. But up until the late 60s, if you were from browner countries, more or less, you weren't even allowed to immigrate here. So there was a Immigration Naturalization Act 1967 that passed. So in the 70s, there was the floodgates. That's when all the Asians started coming over, and people from different countries that weren't just European countries. And when they came, the government didn't want them congregating in certain areas, and so they would actually displace certain communities. My family ended up at first, my parents were based in Sulphur, Oklahoma. So imagine growing up in the countryside in Korea, and you don't know the language, you don't know the culture of the States, and the first place that you live in is Sulphur, which is like, it's like a national park. There's like nothing there in Oklahoma. And then they moved to the East Coast, and I was in Baltimore, and my dad was looking for work, and I ended up being born there in Baltimore.
Wow.
Ellicott City. Yeah.
You have brothers and sisters?
I got an older brother. He was born in Oklahoma. I have a younger brother, so I'm the middle of three boys. And my older brother is a pastor out in Boston, in Cambridge.
Oh, wow.
He works with a lot of the inner city youth, the community. He is an amazing person, incredible person. And then my younger brother is a public defender here in LA. So,
wow.
Yeah, and he has an interesting story because he was working for Snoop for a long time, and then he pivoted and became an attorney, and he was doing family law, and now he's a public defender.
What was he doing for Snoop?
You can only imagine, right?
As a public defender.
Yeah.
Were you guys a religious family growing up?
We were religious, yeah. My parents raised us So for the Asian American community, especially like Koreans, when they came to the States, it was harder for them to assimilate. So there was a lot of churches that started up. And this is why Korean American Christianity is such a thing.
Yeah.
It was a way for the community to come together and have a place to go, because within their own communities, they didn't really find a place. So they would kind of like hang out. So church was there, but it was also a place just for parents to brag about their kids and also cheat each other out of pyramid schemes. That's what I would say about the Korean churches. And then you learn some good lessons along the way. But we grew up with like a pretty spiritual foundation. And then along the way, my dad was also very well versed in all religions, all philosophies, all literature. So he encouraged us and inspired us to read a little bit of everything. So we had like a virtual library in our house. This is like, I was Krishna for like a year and a half, when I was in college. Like I, studied the Book of Satan. That's awesome, right? Like I've read the Quran twice. Like I had to learn a little bit of everything just to know where like I stood. I studied Christian apologetics. I went to Biola for that for a little while, just understanding like the philosophical, the rational, logical approach to the Christian faith, instead of just like, oh, God said, and just because the Bible said, more just understanding things from like a philosophy-based approach. So, I studied a little bit of everything, and my whole family was always like that. My dad was always like super open and receptive, and we discussed religion, we discussed philosophy, we discussed science, we discussed everything in the house. It wasn't like pushed down your throat or nothing. No, it was just there. No. They, in fact, when we were 12, like when we turned around 12 or 13 and we were kind of age to have our own mindset, our parents gave us the decision of, do you want to keep going to church on Sundays or not? And obviously all of us were like, we don't want to go to church. And so we stopped going to church, and we found our way back to our spiritual walks, our faiths in our own ways, in our own capacities. And it's pretty interesting how that happened, because they just let it be like this open canvas for us, and nothing was ever pushed down our throat. No. So how old were you when that happened, when you just stopped going to church? 12, I think. I mean, I was just like, yeah, fuck yeah, I'm not going to church. Like, I'm going to go skate, like I can hang out on Sundays and not do, they're like, yeah, do whatever you want. Did you still believe in it even though you didn't go to church? Yes. Yeah. I still do. I still believe in God. I just listened to the episode with your mom, and she's talking about like what her faith looks like, and she still very much believes in a God. And I do. Like, I still believe in God. I don't subscribe to a lot of the American approach to what like the Protestant Christian religion is. Like, I don't subscribe to a lot of it. I don't necessarily agree with a lot of that approach, but I think there's certain elements and there's certain things that I think are applicable to everyone, just basically boiling down to the golden rule, like treating each people like being kind, being a compassionate person. I think like I believe Christ was a real person at some point in history. I think his tenets of like being compassionate towards people, putting other people first, like, everyone should follow that stuff. Like, I don't find any room. To me, the idea of what God is just love. Like, I think our concept of love comes from whatever God is, and I don't think like we're born with that. I don't think we learn it. I think it's innately within us. And so if there's no room for hate, there's no room for judging in that space for me. Like, I think it's all about love and taking care of people and putting other people first. And it's the same thing that I have 2 boys, and it's the same thing that we teach them and instill in them in our house too. How old are they? They are 6 and 9. Awesome. Yeah. So how are you in school? How was I in school? I was very much advanced. I sound like it. Yeah. I ended up, I was reading books, like full novels, and doing math. At what age? Before kindergarten, when I was like 4. Dude. So this is my first genius on the podcast. I don't know if I was a genius. I still don't think of myself as a genius, but I was very well. I love to read, and I still do. Wow. I love telling stories. I love writing. I love You're all a great that writer, stuff. Man. Great Thanks. Writer. And so I always had this magnetic attraction towards books. I loved books, and I could read before kindergarten. So I ended up skipping first grade. And that actually set the tone for the rest of my life, because from that point on, I was always a year younger, right? I was brown. Not only was I brown, I was an Asian person in my community. So sometimes I was the only Asian person in the entire class, or like sometimes there was like 3 people in the entire school that like looked like me. And growing up in the 80s, being an Asian person, especially an Asian male, like there's so many stereotypes thrown your way. And there was a lot of just a lot of fear and racism, discrimination based against Asians because of, let's say, like the automobile market, right? Like Japan was kind of swallowing up the car market. So there was like, if you look at the movies back then, there was a lot of we weren't portrayed in the best light. You know, if anything, we were like the karate guy. And so being Asian person in a community which was predominantly white and Latino, I was a year younger than everybody else.
Yeah.
I was a middle son. So that was already loaded with having like a lot of insecurities and feeling like I had to overcompensate for everything. And so exactly that. I was always overcompensating, and in that way it made me a better person, you know, like I was always the underdog. I still see myself as the underdog. I'm 38 years old today. I have a business that I love. I work with people that I love. I get to do what I love every day, but I still see myself as the underdog, and I love it. You know, like I love having always thinking.
Keeps you hungry too.
Yeah, it keeps me hungry. Like I always want to overcome things and surmount things and, you know, prove people wrong. Like it's just what drives me, you know. It's exhausting. It's an exhausting way to live, but like I think it's created like it's motivated me to get out of bed every morning.
Yeah. So you got good grades obviously, and you graduated probably really well. And
no, so that's the thing. I did get good grades, but then I also like failed a lot of classes, right? Like I was like failing here and there. I was good. I did well in my SATs. Like I think I got like a 1440 when I was in like 9th grade, which is like, you know, at the time was pretty good for what it was. And I was, you know, so in some ways I was advanced, but I wasn't really interested in school. I wasn't motivated by school.
Were you too smart? You were just bored?
I think I was bored. I don't know if I was too smart, but like I just never felt challenged by school. Yeah. And a lot of kids feel like that. That's 100%. Why we end up either getting into trouble or we find things like skateboarding or art. And if those avenues aren't provided for us, you know, I think it's a different generation today where we're starting to recognize that if a kid isn't good at biology, it doesn't mean that he's going to be a failure in life. Like maybe there's something, maybe he's going to be a YouTube personality, or maybe he's going to design kitchenware. Or like there's other avenues for them to succeed. But back then, especially coming from immigrant parents who were told, you know, like first of all, my parents were scared to death just coming to this country, let alone thinking like, how are our children going to survive in this country? We don't understand the culture, the language. And so all they've ever known was if you become a doctor or a lawyer, or if you have a professional career, you're safe, or you have a government job, like you're safe, right? Like these things were very safe.
Totally.
And to be an artist or to freestyle it as like, I want to be a pro skater one day was like completely unheard of, you know, it's frightening. And so, like those options were never really viable for me as a young person. And so I was like, what the hell can I do? Like, if I'm not good at school, I must be complete fuck up, you know? Yeah. And instead of realizing like, I'm not good at school, but that's because I'm good at all this other stuff, or I like to do other stuff.
Were your parents like strict about your grades?
Yeah, they were super strict, really, really strict. I mean, it's that the typical Asian stereotypes of like, if you don't get an A, like an A was bad because it wasn't an A plus. So like if I came home with a report card of like A minuses or even a B plus, it was just like I was in serious trouble. You know?
So is that pressure all the time?
There's pressure all the time. Parents were never satisfied. Parents were never happy enough. Not a lot of like physical like hugs in the house, you know,
really?
Like just not a lot of support, you know, just like look, my parents grew up in the Korean War, you know, so and Korea at the time too was essentially a third world country. Like my parents grew up with like lots of disease in their communities, in their towns. Like my dad grew up on a farm. His mom died when he was a kid, so he grew up without a mother. Damn. Like these are very real things. If anyone is interested in what I'm talking about, there's a great book called Pachinko, which kind of outlines this era of Korean history. Okay. But the war and poverty and just the hardships of the weather and the climate's super brutal over there. Yeah. So, you know, there was not much to be happy about. And this is a typical immigrant story. Like, we live in the best country in the world, America. You know, we have so many luxuries, like so many amazing opportunities here.
Totally.
But for people who immigrate from other countries, they have different stories, especially from that era of time, you know, like that part of history. Like people came from very meager means. There's a lot of death, a lot of disease, there's a lot of poverty. And so like, what is there to be happy about? You know, my parents used to tell me that all the time. Like we would go back and visit our relatives in Korea, and they were, you know, like they would just be super grim all the time and like super negative. And I was just like, why are they so bummed out all the time? And my dad was just like, yeah, you get to eat McDonald's every day, ride your skateboard around, listen to the music you want, to hang out with your friends. It's warm weather. like, look at what these people have had to live through their whole life. Like, there's no like light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
There's no hope. You know, they're just trying to survive.
Yeah.
And so I grew up just being very grateful, thankful that my parents had even emigrated out of Korea, come here,
Yeah.
and given me a life where I could kind of pursue that American dream. Like, I building my own business, working for myself. Like,
Yeah.
again, best country in the world. Yeah.
So, did you go when you graduated? Did you know what you wanted to do? Did you go to college after that?
Yeah, so I graduated. After I graduated high school, I went to UC San Diego. I didn't know why I wanted. Like, I got accepted to UC Berkeley, UCLA. I chose UC San Diego just because there's like all the awesome skate spots from like that point of skateboarding,
Yeah.
where like, you know,
Yeah.
like Pacific Drive was a thing, and like
Yeah.
all my favorite skaters were like down in that part of the world. And so I was just like, oh, San Diego skateboarding is
It's the Mecca.
so cool. It's the Mecca.
Yeah.
And so I went to UC San Diego for 4 years. I studied. I was going for a triple major. I ended up with like 3 minors and major, and like studied theater and psychology and communication and graphic design and all this stuff. But yeah, I kind of like got a mix of everything. I think that's like most kids today, I think, kind of follow this way of life. Like, they're multi-hyphenates.
Yeah.
They're a little bit of everything. You know, I'm sure, you know, Max is obviously like that,
Yeah,
right?
totally, yeah.
And you don't just listen to one genre of music. You
No.
don't wear just one genre of clothes. And I already thought like that growing up in the 80s and 90s. Like, I listened, you know, grew up in the hardcore scene, and listened
Yeah.
to punk, but also went to ska and swing shows, and then also like listened to like a lot of backpack rap.
Yeah.
Which at the time, like, you were a Hesher, or you hung out with the Skins, hung out with the Skins in our
Yeah.
school, and you know, the Rudies hung out with the Rude Boys, and like everything was so segregated.
Yeah.
But I think I had so many diverse interests, and I didn't really see why there had to be a reason for these walls set up. And so even when I was studying in school, I was just like, I want to act, but I also want to understand like the human mind. And so like, I want to study psychology, and like, I also want to study journalism because I love journalism. Like, I love
Yeah.
other people's stories. I want to learn about people, and I want to share that story with the rest of the world. So like, what is that? And so I think kids today have it right. Like, I think the internet allowed everyone to think like that now, to where like you don't have to do just one thing.
Yeah.
And in some ways, like, I miss the old days of like people were in categories, and
Yeah.
there was genres and like very clear rules about like,
Yeah.
if you dress this way, this, and you can't be a poser if you wear these.
Yeah.
And now everyone, like, you can't tell like who's a gangster. Like, he's wearing like skinny jeans, and all of a sudden he's like the scariest guy in the block. And you're
Yeah.
like, whoa, what? You know, like,
It's true. Or somebody's wearing Dickie and Cortez and they're not.
yeah, and they're not exactly.
Yeah.
And so like, you don't know really. Like,
Yeah.
it was kind of cool back then, just aesthetically, to walk around a high school campus and go like, the jocks in the Letterman jackets, and like the nerds
The
and the
nerds.
theater kids, and
The
like
stoners.
the stoners and the hippies,
Yeah.
and like everyone, you know, and they played the part, and it was really cool. But I was the kid that floated between circles. At lunchtime, I would sit here for 5 minutes and sit here, and I would just
Yeah,
like,
sounds like
I
us.
was a generalist. Yeah.
Yeah. What so what was your first exposure to skateboarding? Did that come before punk music, or was it skating first?
Definitely skating first. You know, just growing up in the 80s in general, I think the Bones Brigade just kind of
Me too.
permeated the culture, right?
VHSs, man.
Everything about the Bones Brigade was so taboo and dangerous, like the iconography, the way that those kids wore their hair, the way that they dressed. And then,
Yeah.
of course, comes with skateboards. And I think my first taste of what skateboarding, and not just like the act of skateboarding or the skateboard itself, but the attitude of skateboarding. I had
Yeah.
a friend whose older brother was this kid, Joseph, and he was a Korean kid. And so this, I thought, was also really different for the time, because all the skaters I saw, they looked like Tony Hawk, and they had like a Tony Hawk flop and whatnot.
Totally.
But he was a Korean skinhead, and his name was Joe, and he wore like cramps. I remember he would always wear his like yellow cramps shirt, and he had like, I don't remember what kind of board he had, but he had like a super sick board. He wore Thrasher hoodies all the time.
Yeah.
And he would always like smoke and drink, and he was like the cool kid, and I would always follow him around and be like, man, that guy's so cool. Like, I want to skateboard because I want to be like him, you know? And I was like 5 or 6 years old at the time.
shit.
So like, that to me was always like, in my head, when I think of what makes skateboarding cool, it's still that guy, you know? And like, I always aspire to be that. And the thing is, is that I got into skateboarding, like, you know, in the 80s, I was butt boarding a lot. And then I was 9 and 10. Then I started learning how to like actually ride my board, like in a way where I could do tricks and stuff. And the 90s were the best part, like the
100%.
90s, the mid 90s, you know, like speaking of the movie, but really that era captured, like that movie captured a real emotion and cultural movement at the time of it was a black sheep movement, you know, like skateboarding was not a viable industry. You know, it was pre-X Games, it was pre-Mountain Dew commercials. It was also like it had peaked in the 80s and it followed off in the early 90s where people were like, you can't still be doing that, it's not cool. And so everyone who was in it at that time was really in it for the love and saw something in it about being like the outcast, being the marginalized fringe
100%.
kid, you know, like I don't fit anywhere else. I know I'm not supposed to be doing this. Like I shouldn't be here because it's not cool. It's not relevant. Girls don't think it's cool. There's no money or future into it. And so we gravitated towards it.
Yeah.
And I think subculture in general at that time, the surf subculture, the skate subculture, punk subculture, the reason why all those things were considered so dangerous and gnarly and off limits was there was potentially no future in it.
Yeah.
You know, like
good point.
My parents were always like, yeah, like how are you going to make a future being a skateboarder? Like even Tony Hawk, the best skateboarder in the world at the time, was like not killing it really, you know, because like Vert was dead. So like, how are you going to even do that? And you're not really good at skateboarding. And it was just like, yeah, there's no hope. Like this is, which is weird because today everything that the kids think is cool is like, how do I make money? Or like everything they get into is because there's like, oh, well, this guy made a lot of money doing it, so that's why I want to do it.
Yeah.
But we did everything to not make money. Right? Like it was 100%. All about like staying poor and staying pure. And it was like, stay poor, stay core.
It's something we're passionate about. We loved it.
Yeah. We were like, there's no hope.
Yeah.
There's no hope in this. Our future is we have no future. It's a dead end life, but we love it so much. And so we're going to do it because we don't care. And like,
that was such a great feeling, wasn't it?
It's still a great feeling. Like you know, bring it up to speed, up to date today. Like I still run my company like that. We make money, obviously. Like I make a good living. I provide a good living for a lot of our staff. But the way I still think about what I do every day is not with this end goal of I need to make $1 billion.
Yeah.
You know, like I do it because I just love doing it. And if you I was telling Sean Weatherspoon was in the office today, and we were talking about like
shout out Sean.
But Sean was just breaking out some of his early story of round 2 and his when he started his thrift stores. And he's just like, yeah, the first day we made $200 and we're like, oh my God, we're rich and we're so ecstatic. $200, right? That guy makes $200 like in a minute now, right? Or in a second, actually. Yeah. So like it's nothing to him, but still he still reminisces back on that feeling. Yeah. And it's the same for me. Like when Ben and I started the company and we sold our first t-shirt for like $40, I never got as happy as that throughout the last 16 years. Like that's the happiest. And it had nothing to do with like, I made $1 billion, $100 million. Yeah. It was just about, I'm getting to make a living by doing something I love. You know, I drew that picture. I put on a t-shirt. A stranger bought it. I have enough money to eat today. Yeah. Like that's supreme happiness to me. Yeah. So I think that comes from the spirit of all of us growing up. Like there was no future. There was no money in doing what we did. And so if you add $1 million on top of it, cool, thanks. But like, it doesn't make me 1 million times more happy. Yeah. Like I'm just happy as it is. Like I was always happy just to be able to do this. So like day one, I was rich. You know, that's how I think of it. Yeah. Yeah.
So what was your best skateboard trick?
Oh, okay. So I had the very first trick I learned because I didn't know how to do kickflips at the time. Right. So look, this is pre-internet. So like we had skate videos. There's like maybe 3 kids in town who actually knew how to skate. And I just knew like there was a thing called a kickflip and I couldn't figure out how to do it. I couldn't do slow motion on my VCR and figure out like the mechanics behind it. So what I started and ended up doing was just pressure flips, but they were like straight pressure flips. Yeah. And so that's still my favorite trick to this day. It's the worst looking trick, but though, yeah, I can still do it. It's no problem, but it's just the most fun and pure. Like that moment of skateboarding to me is like everything about skateboarding that I loved was landing that trick and going like, I don't know what that was, but I did it. And everyone I would do in front of is just like, you're doing like a weird straight pressure flip. Like that's not even a real trick. And I'm like, yeah, but it feels good to me.
That's what it's about. It's about the feeling back then too. It wasn't like,
slides.
yeah, your rusty slides. But then you broke your leg recently though.
I broke my leg on a ramp at work. I grew up without, there was no ramps or vert, or especially, again, going back to this time in the 90s, like ramp was just kind of dead. Like any transition was kind of dead. Like it was all about street skating, So I wish I had gotten more comfortable with the ramp growing up, but I just never had that. I never had that access. You were lucky enough. You were the generation slightly before mine. So like you guys had ramps and stuff. But when we came around, everyone's just like, no, ramps. Like it's all about like weird like flippy tricks and like no slides and grinds stairs.
Did you do rails and stuff?
I've never been able to skate a rail.
That was so scary.
No, it's like the idea of it still doesn't make much sense to me, and it's not exciting or enticing to me at all. Yeah. Like I just was never that kind of a skate kid, I could skate like little things. I could ollie 5 stairs, like heel flips, switch tricks here and there, but I was never like the guy, and still not like, still was never really that athletically inclined. I love surfing more than I do skating.
Did you play sports?
I played soccer growing up.
Okay.
But eventually I lost interest in that, and everything about my brain was centered around art.
Okay.
I was like, this is where I can really distinguish myself. Like skateboarding, I wasn't the best skater. I was probably one of the worst.
Yeah.
I would bring my camera around to shoot photos of our friends skating and like me skating and whatnot. But art was somewhere where I really shined. Yeah. And I found a voice, and people looked to me to be the art guy. No one looked to me to be like, oh, you want to who's like a sick skater, look at Bobby. But they were like, do you want someone to draw something on your skateboard deck? Go to Bobby. Yeah. And I like being that guy. Yeah. Like I like being wanted for something. And up until that point, no one was really looking to me for anything. Again, because, maybe because I'm a brown kid, maybe because I'm a year younger, and everyone just kind of counted me out. And then except for, oh, maybe we'll stop picking on you if you draw me something, which is actually a thing that happened in high school with the jocks, where they would be like always picking on me because I was a weird, skate kid at school. But they were like, if you can draw my Letterman jacket, the patches on my Letterman jacket, we'll leave you alone. And I was just like, cool, I'll do it, and I get paid. Awesome. So I use my art.
Did you get beat up in school or no? Ever?
I never got beat up.
Yeah, that's great.
I got into fights, but I didn't get like beat up. But I did, the jocks always picked on the skaters. Yeah, like you'd walk by lunch and they'd say things to you and whatnot. But I always kept it cool with them because they'd, sit by me in class and be like, yo, man, like, I heard you can draw. Can you, like, do this for me? Like, I got you. Yeah. So I was like, it's like jail. Like, I had to, like, find a thing,
Give me your lunch.
Yeah. I'm like, I'll draw you something, so.
I saw a quote. You said that your attitude and your philosophy and your ethic came from what you learned in hardcore music.
That's absolutely true. This is absolutely true. In fact, the hundreds came from hardcore. The entire spirit and the attitude behind the hundreds came from hardcore. And hardcore means different things to different people. Yeah. But for what it represented to me was this idea of do it yourself, and what I like to say, do it for yourself. And it was very independent. It was very doing something because you like truly cared, and like not counting on anyone else to do it. And what I think I loved most about hardcore was, in terms of the shows themselves, was it never felt like there was a hierarchy or a distinction between the artists, the bands, and the purveyors,
100%.
And the crowd and the audience, right? Like there might be a barricade there for like photographers or like a no mosh pit, thing. Yeah. But regardless, the singer would jump into the crowd, and at certain points, if you were a casual observer of a hardcore show, it's still today, if you watch it, you'll get confused as to who's actually in the band, because so many kids are on stage grabbing the microphone. And at that point, you realize it's not really about the singer. It's not really about the bassist. It's about the drum. It's really like everyone kind of becomes one thing, and it's about the music, right?
100%.
We're all sharing. We all have ownership in this thing, and there's no wall. So this idea of like no walls in music is, I feel like, a very hardcore mentality. Yeah. And when we were starting our brand, it was the same idea. I was like, I love streetwear. It wasn't really called streetwear at the time, but I love clothing. I love fashion. Yeah. I love all these like brands like Stussy and Fresh Drive and Extra Large, but I don't really know anything about the founders or the people behind them, right? Yeah. Like I don't even know what they look like. I don't know what they ate for lunch today. I don't know what their politics are. I don't know their stance on vaccinations, like whatever it is, And I'm like, I want to know all that stuff, because when I go every night out to the shows, I can sing with the band. I feel like I'm a part of the music. And then afterwards I can like chop it up with them. Yeah. We can go to Denny's and hang out, and I can ask them like, what are your views on vaccinations and politics? And they would tell me, and I'm like, I didn't have to support everything they believed in, but I was just like, wow, it's so transparent. I back this band because they're being honest with me, and like all cards are on the table, like nothing's being hidden. So can there be a company or a clothing company that is modeled after that type of spirit? And that's what we try to do. I was just like, that's what the blog is going to be. I'm going to be transparent. You're going to know everything about us, just like it is in hardcore. There's no distinction. There's no stage. I'm not singing down to you. Our very first t-shirt was a picture. It's a photo I took actually of Slick Rick, and he's rapping, but I cut him out as a silhouette. And the idea is like, it looks like you're looking down on the singer or like looking up at him, depending on like how you look at this image. Yeah. It's kind of like optical illusion. And that was the idea, was just like, we're not talking down to you. Like maybe you're talking down to us, or like maybe like, where does the microphone actually sit?
I love that.
We wanted to just be on the same level, you know? So that's what we tried to do. And today it's a very commonly practiced type of brand, you know, a transparent, honest, very straightforward, direct brand. Everyone has one. If you have a social media page, you know what the owner looks like, you know what they're into, you know what they ate for lunch today. Yeah. But back then it was like a pretty novel approach to building a clothing company.
Yeah. And so where the name The Hundreds come from?
The Hundreds came from, I say many different things. Whenever the real story is whenever something happens by the hundreds, it connotes like there's something important going on there. So it's really about this play of strength in numbers, and it refers to people and it refers to community. So it has to do with like hundreds of people. It could be thousands or millions or whatever it is, but it's just to indicate that it's not just about one person or two guys running a brand. Yeah. It's about like all of us doing this together. So it's about community.
Yeah.
Which is also a hardcore thing.
100%. Mm-hmm. You were a straight edge kid too for a while, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was straight edge from 16 to maybe like 21, 22. Yeah. And I didn't really drink. I just started eating meat. I mean, if you want to work the veganism, vegetarian stuff in there too. But at that point, I wasn't as like into claiming straight edge. And started dating a girl who wasn't straight edge. Yeah, who became my wife. So in the end,
amazing.
The end, it all worked out. But
who was your inspiration becoming vegetarian straight edge?
I think just the kids within our crew at the time that we were growing up with. Especially going vegan and vegetarian at that time. All the food we were eating, anyways. Like everywhere we went, we had to like, you know, go to vegan friendly restaurants, or we'd have to go into the kitchen and check the grill. So I was just like, I'm already eating like this. Yeah. Might as well go all the way and just like, and do it. And I'll tell you, and I always tell everyone this, but it was the healthiest time in my life. And I never got sick for like 4 or 5 years. Yeah. So it's a real thing. Yeah, I know.
Were your parents, so after you graduated from college, what were you going to do? Like, what was your first, like, in between college and the hundreds, what were you doing?
In between college and the hundreds, so in the middle of college, I got an internship at Transworld. So I used to work at Transworld.
That's sick.
There was a magazine at the time called Warp, which was very much my thing, because it wasn't just skate, surf, or snow. It was like everything together with some music.
Yeah. Remember Warp Japan too?
Yeah, Warp Japan was licensed out of that. So like
we made the cover once. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sure. I feel like I remember that actually. So, and then we transitioned Warp. It became a magazine called Stance. It just changed the name, but it was the same thing, and I was a part of that. Yeah. And then I was just like, I don't know what I want to do, but I know I like to write, which is why I was at the magazine. I like to shoot photos. I like streetwear. I love skateboarding. I love music. Like, what can I do with all of this stuff? And again, at that time, there was no viable career path for that. Like, there's like, what do you do?
Were you worried about the future at that point, or no?
I don't think so. I don't think many kids, kids at that point are like concerned about like, what am I going to do? And you have like insecurities, but it wasn't like, things are going to work out, you know, like I think things are going to work out. I was more worried about like, like the pressure from my family to pursue a career.
Did they like that you're working at Transworld? Did they like your job you're in?
No. Okay. They were like, get a real job, you know? So I ended up, the year after I graduated college, I moved to Japan, and I was writing for Japan because 9/11 happened, and all of the writing jobs, they dried up in the States.
Interesting.
Like, overnight. And so I moved to Japan. My girlfriend was living there. I lived there for months, and then I was writing for all the magazines out there, and they loved it. They were like, oh, an American guy who came from the skate, punk, and snow and surf world can write for stuff out here and talk about like American culture.
Yeah.
And then meanwhile, the American magazines back home were like, oh, you can talk about like Japanese culture because there was this great dialogue that was happening at the time. And through that, I found more and more about the Japanese streetwear, like A Bathing Ape, you know, like the startup brands at the time, like Bounty Hunter.
That's our boy, Hikaru. Shout out.
Hikaru, yeah. So visiting those stores and just like my mind being blown by collecting these little bear bricks, the sneaker,
all the vinyl toys,
all the toys, the Medicom stuff, the sneaker retro thing, retro Levi's. Yeah.
The world's mine.
Yeah. So like such an exciting time. Pre-internet for the most part, definitely pre-social media, but literally like walking the streets of Harajuku, stumbling into stores, going like, "What is this?" You know, like
Takashita Street.
Yeah. And just like, what an incredible time, you know. And then the kids were dressing like that Fruits magazine style, like wacky, like you know, hair colors and everything. And it was such a cool thing.
Perfect timing for you to be there too.
Perfect time. So you know, stars aligned and collided, and I was there. And then when I was there, I was like, this is not for me, the freelance life. Like, I am not disciplined enough to do it. So I ended up going to law school.
Wow.
Yeah. So I went to law school when I got home.
What year was that?
That was 2002. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay. 9/11.
So, yeah. Right. A year after 9/11, I went to law school. Yeah. And I went to law school because I'd always had this background and interest in activism and social justice and just awareness. And I figured if I can go to law school, I can kind of break shit up from the inside, like get into the system.
Infiltrate the system.
Like that was my thing. I was like,
shout out to Madball.
I was like ACLU, like sign up for the NLG, National Lawyers Guild. I would go to like all the protests and like document like police brutality and stuff like that. I was like that.
You're taking pictures, obviously.
And taking pictures of
great
like
photographer,
police
by the way.
brutality. Thank you.
Photographer.
I try to do a little bit of everything.
You do everything, yes.
But yeah, I was like, went to law school for that purpose. And in the middle of school, that's when I met Ben, my partner in the hundreds now.
You met him at school, at law school?
I met him in school.
Okay.
You know, we were interested in law, but we didn't really want to be lawyers. I think we were buying time more than anything. And I knew I didn't want to be like a corporate lawyer. Like, I didn't want to go into like big firm life. And again, back then it was a different time. So like nobody wore Supreme. Like if you saw someone wearing Supreme, it was like, that guy actually flew out to New York to buy it, knows what it is. It's a really, and usually if you saw someone wearing streetwear back then, they were doing something interesting. Like you'd be like, yo man, what do you do? Oh, I'm an independent film director. Or like, you know, because you kind of really had to be in the know. You were like
tight
in this
circles,
fresh job,
tight circle.
Pervert 69.
Jerseys. Yeah. So
what was the brand you liked? What were you rocking?
At that point in time, I was wearing a lot of Supreme and A-Life.
Okay.
Bathing Ape.
Okay.
And that was in the like 2002 era.
Yeah.
In the 90s, it was extra large all
Dickies.
day. Dickies.
FUCT.
Fucked.
Yeah.
Fucked.
555 Soul.
555 Soul. 555.
What was the Beastie Boys one?
Extra large.
Yeah.
Extra large. Yeah. Loved extra large. In fact, if there's any brand that I can say had as much like an aesthetic influence on what we do or what I try to emulate more than anything is extra large. Because extra large really captured this idea of like LA workwear. Like when Eli opened that store on Vermont, they had the extra large store. And what was interesting was they had like their extra large t-shirts, but then they also had like Dickies, Carhartt, Ben Davis. Mm-hmm. And like that was something that was like so uniquely LA, West Coast.
Yeah.
Like, it's not an East Coast thing. Like East Coast streetwear at the time, like was like PNB Nation, 555 Soul, like had a certain look, but LA streetwear was just like, no, we're all about like the swamp meet workwear.
Yeah,
you know?
love
Like
that.
the Chicano Latino culture, like borrowing from that or ripping from it and more than anything. And so like that's what I loved more than any other streetwear in terms of like what it looked like. But as far as like brands that I thought were cool, like late 90s, early 2000s, I mean, of course it was Supreme and A-Life and Bape. Yeah.
So when you got back so you're in Japan, and when you got back, you started.
Yes. So I was in Japan. I came back, started law school, met Ben in the middle of law school.
Shout out to Ben.
Then, shout out to Ben. Wouldn't be here today without Ben. And then we started, we did all 3 years of law school. We took the bar exam. The morning after the bar exam, we started the brand full time, even though we were already running in school. But like usually the bar exam's a 3-year three-day test. You study for it for 3 years and you take it over 3 days. And so you're exhausted by the last day. You usually travel in Europe. Like everyone leaves town, goes on vacation. We woke up at 6 a.m. the next morning, walked into my apartment, or Ben walked into my apartment. We just got to work. Started
Did you have the name
t-shirts.
already? Did you have the bomb
The
already?
name was already going. The brand at that point was about 1.5 years, 2 years old.
Okay.
No bomb yet, but the name was around, and we were known for certain t-shirts. The biggest one was a t-shirt that said "Hip Hop is Dead"
I remember
on
that.
the front. And on the back, there was like a lot of the fallen MCs. It was like Big, Pac, Big L, Big
I do remember that.
Jam Master Jay. And so it was like literally hip hop is dead. Like
Yeah.
our idea of what hip hop was is gone. But also like, where's the culture at? You know, and I wrote this like little like I forgot what it said on the back, but there's like a little paragraph I'd written about like, you know, what's gone on with the hip hop culture. And the idea of like hip hop is dead came from like, you know, crass like punk is dead. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
so that was also like another twist on it.
That's before Nas's record too, I think.
It was before Nas's
Yeah,
record.
Hip Hop is Dead, yeah.
And, you know, I'm not saying Nas took it from me, but like that t-shirt was everywhere for 2 years.
Dadaist.
Yeah.
Everyone wore it.
Yeah.
And so that was our first big hit. Then we had a couple more big hits. And then the logo stuff didn't come around till like year 3, year 4 of the company. And that's when that stuff really took off.
When did it
Yeah.
become like a passion project and an idea that you guys had together, when it became like, holy shit, this is going to be like our career. This is like legit. Like this is like our business.
So I
Like
get
you weren't making
asked
money
that.
without the jump.
No. So like enough to making the point we were making enough money just to get by was
Yeah.
maybe 2 years in, and it wasn't like we were making like tons of money. It
Yeah.
was just Ben saying we have enough to pay rent for my apartment, which is where the company was
Studio.
based out of at the
Yeah.
time. And so that was right when we were graduating school. I remember it was in our last year of law school, and Ben came in and he was just like, I got great news. And I was like, what? He's just like, dude, we're making enough money now, which is probably like $1,000 a month, like something dumb. Okay. He's like, we're making
How
enough
old were you?
money. We were 23,
Still, that's
20,
great. It's
24.
Great. It's good, yeah.
He's like, we're making enough money to where we can pay the bills. We can pay ourselves to eat a little bit. And I'm like, good. We're solid. I'm the happiest man
Did you
in
have
the
a day
world.
job too at that time?
No. We were still in school.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So we were just living off of school money, and we
Damn.
were just like getting by. And so I was just like, that's it. Like, I don't need to be a lawyer. I don't need any other job. This is all I've ever needed. And again, like going back to the point of that's the happiest I've ever been. Like I've never
Yeah.
been happier than that moment of
Yeah.
knowing I have just enough to live. Like, great. I can make stuff that I love for a living and make a living doing it. Like, let's go. And so, you know, I would say that was the moment when we realized, but it was like literally like $1,000 a month, which for kids today means nothing.
Yeah.
But for me at the time meant everything.
And then were your parents worried at that point? Like,
So worried.
what's this brand? Like, what's the 100?
Yeah,
Like,
what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
especially a t-shirt company.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? You graduated from law school. I was looking at a starting job of $125,000 a year.
Damn.
Yeah, right out the gate, because I was near the top of my class in law school, and I had really solid offers lined up with some of these big firms.
Yeah.
And I was just like, hell no. Like, I never wanted to do that to begin with. I went to law school for this reason. I don't want that kind of a job. I'm not going to push paper at a desk. Some people, they thrive in it. Good
Yeah.
for them. We need those people
We
in the
do, we
world.
need 'em, yeah.
You know, we need the paper pushers. We need the people to be the cogs in the machine to make the machines work.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, I can't do it. Like, I just need to make enough to get by. My parents didn't understand. They didn't understand for maybe like 6 or 7 years.
6 or 7
Yeah.
years.
And then finally they like maybe, you know, 2011, 2012, which is not that long
That's
ago.
crazy,
You know,
man.
they like finally were like,
Okay.
okay, like, I guess you should have pursued a career in the
Wow.
arts, and you were right the whole time, and we apologize. And to their defense, like, I wasn't even bummed about it, because I was like, look, you guys were scared shitless. You came to this country. You had no idea that the internet was going to happen. You didn't know what streetwear was. Of course you're scared. You're walking into like a black box of what America is and like what the future of your children could be. And so like, I don't judge you. You were just worried, you know, like you didn't know what how e-commerce was going to happen.
Yeah.
Or, you know, like none of that. Like no one knows. So like that also goes to the point, if you're a kid today and your parents are telling you one thing, and you're and the authorities and the experts and everyone's telling you this is what the future is going to look like, no one knows.
No one knows.
You know,
Yeah, it's
and
speculation.
it's all speculation.
Yeah, did you feel like you had to prove yourself to them? Like, I can do this on my own?
Yeah,
like,
I still do. I'm still
Even
vying.
now, huh?
I'm still vying for their approval. I don't think as children we ever really stop vying for like our dad's approval or our mom's approval or whoever raised us. Like, we're always looking for them to say like,
good job.
Good job. I'm proud of you.
Yeah,
you know, like you did it. You did it.
Yeah,
A little validation, you know, especially in streetwear. It's a bunch of insecure men. We're all looking for validation from, we all have daddy issues.
Yeah.
I swear, like that's what streetwear is all about. It's like graffiti, tattoo, streetwear. We all have daddy issues. We're all looking for validation from other men. Like none of my guy friends who aren't in streetwear have this issue of like going to parties where it's just like 90% other guys sizing each other up, approving of each other's shoes, saying like, all right, you're cool enough to hang out with me.
Wow. Even adults do that shit. That's crazy.
Yeah, man. That's like all it is. It's all it is.
So when the hundreds came out, who was like, so the hot brands, you come out, all of a sudden you a threat? Or are you getting respect? Or are people like,
no,
welcome to our branding world, or welcome to the
no,
because only streetwear I knew was Vision Streetwear.
Yeah. So this generation of streetwear that I started off in with other brands in our class, those brands are like Mishka, Mighty Healthy, Staple and 10 Deep had already kind of been doing it for a while before that, but you can lump them in. Let's say A-Life was lumped in, Married to the Mob.
Yeah, I remember that shit too.
So brands like that was our class. That was our generation of brands. But like, no, there was no immediate respect. In fact, to this day, like most of those people are still not like those brands, but the older guys were like, oh, the 100 is whack. And is
there brands beef?
Yeah.
It's like in music. It's in every kind of
graffiti,
course, like graffiti.
Yeah,
beef.
And back then, I keep saying back then, but really back then in like the early 2000s, streetwear was a non-existent space, right? Like there was like only a few players, only a few stores that carried us, so it really was dog eat dog. And so a lot of the guys and girls who came up from that time period still carry on this attitude, thinking that there's only like 200 people who buy this stuff. Yeah. We're all, there's like, it's dog eat dog, when we forget that streetwear is global. Yeah. And it's billions and billions of dollars.
Yeah.
And there are brands that are making millions of dollars a year that you'll never even hear of, that exist in their own niche. And then there's a streetwear brand for comic books. There's a streetwear brand for leather goods. There's a streetwear brand for hot sauces. Like there really is. There's like Truff sauce, which is like a streetwear hot sauce. Like there's streetwear brands for everything. And so like, it's just funny thinking of the guys in our scene who are still like very much like dog eat dog, hating on everybody. The truth is, it's like the world is a very big place.
Yeah, there's room for everybody.
And there's room for everyone, especially with like China with its doors wide open now, which is what's funding and energizing streetwear more than anything. And the market and the economy, the global economy in general, is China. So it's like now we have China, now we have Russia. Like we don't need to worry about just selling to the same like 2,000 people in America anymore.
Yeah, plus online stuff, obviously. And but when you opened your first store, that was a big deal.
Oh, that was a really big deal. And we did,
because there wasn't many other stores on Supreme. It was Supreme on that street.
On Fairfax.
Yeah.
So we were really early on Fairfax. Fairfax, for those who don't know, is historic Jewish district in LA. Cantor's Deli, which I just heard
Rest
is leaving. Yeah.
So the guy died. Cantor died. Yeah, the owner.
I think they're leaving too. I think I just read something that the restaurant.
That's a staple of Fairfax and Los Angeles.
Staple of LA.
Shout out to Cantor's.
So that's what.
Great chopped salads.
So good.
Yes, go ahead.
Best ceiling display ever. Kibitz Room, Guns N' Roses.
Oh, wow.
Guns N' Roses started in Cantor's in the Kibitz Room.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, that's true. So Fairfax used to be a sleepy Jewish district and not much going on outside of like some Jewish bakeries or some like Israeli eateries and stuff like that. And then in the mid 2000s, there was a store called Reserve. It was a bookstore and eventually became the Fresh Drive flagship.
Oh, wow, that's right in the back. There was books in the front and that was in the back.
That was Nama Giavoni's store, and she partnered with Rick Klotz on it. And that, to me, was the first real store in Fairfax. Wow. It wasn't the first streetwear store per se, but it was like what started bringing the culture around. Supreme then opened because La Brea kind of had its thing with Undefeated.
Oh, that's right.
Union, Stussy was over on La Brea, but Supreme chose Fairfax as like the base for their first LA store.
Okay.
And so that was a big deal. And Ben and we found a little office space up the street on a side street called Rosewood. And that building had burned down the year before. And so everything was new and cheap. And so we moved in right away. So we had a little office there, and it became
I remember the office.
our hangout. It was like our weird little headquarters.
Yeah.
And eventually that became our store. But that was 2006, 2007. And since then, like, Fairfax has kind of become not only a streetwear capital, but like it's almost like a mall now.
It's insane, man.
Yeah. I don't even recognize.
Street.
Yeah, I don't
There's always a
recognize.
line.
Yeah, there's always lines at every store. I don't recognize like most of the people who work in the stores anymore. So like a lot of the golden age of what Fairfax was to me is gone. But like it's still like an amazing place to go to watch culture happen. Kids come together. And streetwear really needed that. Like at the end of the day, my problem with streetwear from the beginning was it was just commerce. It was just clothes. Like it's just like people selling clothes, and there's not much culture around that. I always knew that there needed to be some kind of art base around it or a way for the community to actually come together. So what Fairfax did was it provided a venue for young people to come together and just have conversations, skate together, drink and smoke together, and also just like build. And then the Odd Future guys came together because of Fairfax, and there was music now on the street. And so a real Fairfax culture started to have and then you have all these great restaurants, more venues for people to meet. John and Vinny's. But you can't just have a culture based around commerce or just around goods or product. Like it's not enough, which is my complaint about a lot of reseller focused streetwear today, or reseller culture, is just we're just concentrating on product, and like you just have that certain Supreme hoodie, or you just have that certain off-white shirt, and it's just about the value of something. That's not culture. Culture is actually providing a space for people to come together and have conversations and share. And that's why Fairfax was so effective, and that's why that period of streetwear was so potent and created the world that we live in today, you know?
Yeah.
It's the same. And again, drawing comparisons back to punk and hardcore, that's why those music genres and that spirit and that attitude will never die, because you're always providing a venue for people to just come together, you know, to get out of their safe spaces and to bump into other people and like literally
like-minded people
in the pit, like connect and push and resist. And like all of that is so important for people to even like exist in this world. Like we need connection. We need to like push off of people. We need to like share thoughts and sit outside and take a break and like, what do you do and where do you come from and what's your name and that kind of stuff. Like
very topical.
Yeah. The music, I think, is like almost a byproduct of all that. Like we just need like a place for people to come together always. And as long as you have that, you'll always have great energy and culture happening wherever that is. Yeah.
What kind of that stuff that you do learn from all your experiences with music, also that you instill in your children as a parent, like becoming a dad, coming where you come from?
What did I learn from music that I try to instill?
Yeah, some of the values you learned throughout your life.
I think everything I was just saying, the importance of listening to other people's opinions, right? Like discussion, keeping things open-minded, like learning how to negotiate different kinds of people, you know, like just knowing that kids have to understand, and people in general have to understand that it's like the world is bigger than just them, right? Like a true state of happiness, a true state of success and joy is like just being completely selfless, right? That's also a very core tenet of every world religion, every philosophy is just like selflessness. If we can get to a point where we're thinking of the other person more than we're thinking about ourselves, then like we're in a great place if everyone can do that. And so like, music provided that for me, right? So like I get to hear what other people's thoughts are. I get to share different things. And so like, I think that more than anything.
You consider yourself like optimistic or pessimistic person?
If you asked my wife, or someone who knows me very well, she would say I'm a pessimist.
Oh, interesting.
I'm always
You're
down
realist.
the middle with everything.
Yeah.
Like I'm never one way or the other.
The
like
consummate middle child.
Maybe that's what it is. Like every personality test I've ever done, a Myers-Briggs, like I'm so down the middle. Like I'm not one or the other. So, I'm very optimistic in some ways and like super dark and negative in others. And I don't know.
I've never seen that side of you. So
a negative dark space.
Nah.
I was in that space for a lot of this week because I was frustrated with work.
Okay.
So, but you know, I use that in a way to like, I also do that in a way to challenge myself to
Yeah.
get better. You
Yeah.
know, like I always think it's a plus when I'm in that space. I'm like, why am I feeling like this? Why am I frustrated?
Stuck in a rut.
It's because I know that there's something on the other side and I'm trying to get to it. So how do I get to it? How do I get to it?
Do you have like daily rituals or exercise or things you do every day to make it through the day to stay positive?
No. I probably should. I at some point
Don't
in
you
the
have that
day.
bike in your crib though? What's that bike?
Oh, the
Peloton.
Peloton.
There you go.
I don't do it enough. Oh yeah, surfing.
Okay.
I try to surf. I have to surf at least once or twice a week in
Yeah.
order for me to just maintain some semblance of happiness,
Yeah.
a state of happiness in my life.
So you get home to your family and make
surfing.
you happy. Yeah.
Surfing is important, and at some point I have to connect with my family, both of my sons and my wife, in some way.
Yeah.
Like my kids, as you know, kids have this amazing way of just providing a reset. And so
100%.
whatever's going on at work or whatever's going on in this really fucked up world and time we live in now, sometimes I just need to get away and sit down and talk to my kids for just like a second.
Yeah.
And it's a reset. And like, thank God we have them. Like,
Yeah.
thank God we have family. Thank God we have friends to be able to do that for us, because I wouldn't be able to do it without like that, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rusty had a couple questions. Rusty Pistachio, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey.
Yeah, Rusty.
How you doing?
Hey.
Oh, one more thing. I thought it was amazing when Jay-Z was wearing your shit.
Yeah,
That was incredible. That was an
a
incredible
really
moment.
big. That was a really big moment.
Crazy
for
big.
us.
Was it the safety pins all over the shirt?
It's when Jay-Z came back from retirement. It was the Hangar Tour.
Yeah.
And we didn't know anything
It was
about
a safety
this.
pin shirt, though.
He wore an all-over print safety pin hoodie. And
I
the
was so happy for you, man.
This is a thing that nobody really knows, because everyone at the time, all-over print was like a trend.
Yeah.
And I made this hoodie with, it looked like safety pins were all stuck in it, and no one really understood it. And I was like, that's like an homage to like punk. You know,
Yeah,
it's like, it was
the
a
old
punk
days.
thing to do the safety
It was
pin
so
thing.
cool. I
But
was
no
so-
one really knew that.
But I was
at
so
the time.
happy for you, man. That was such
Yeah.
a huge, because you're a hip hop head too.
Yeah.
And I want to go on record saying
Uh.
that maybe the first band collab was H2O.
I think it was either Avail or H2O.
Oh, Avail, that's right, Avail, yeah.
Avail may
What
have
year?
been
What year
you.
did that shirt come out?
I don't remember.
That
It was
would
in the
have
mid
It's
2000s.
definitely time
that
for a
would have
new.
been around
Definitely time for new H2O collab.
2000
Hint, hint.
Um,
Little
2007
preview.
or 8.
Rusty
think-
Pistachio was here. Rusty hit
Yeah.
me up this week. Rusty goes, "Oh, you doing, Bobby? I have some questions for him." He sent me all these questions. So I was like, "Rusty, just come to my crib and ask him questions in person." Because
Okay.
Rusty was an art student. Rusty had an art major. Rusty makes jewelry, and
Yeah,
Rusty also
Rusty.
deals with people bootlegging stuff.
Oh, no, and constantly. It's the challenge, and that's what I was curious with your street brand. And I'm so psyched that I could sit here and listen to all the things that you were saying
It's
prior.
awesome.
Because it gives a little validation to my question. It's like knowing that you're community minded and knowing that that's where our band comes from. The only reason we started the band was to be part of a community, and it was more about the message than the music. It was more
100%,
about the
always
scene
been.
and being part of a family, and and getting some validation from our peers.
Yeah.
And but I know in this day and age with social media, there are so many images that are just flashed in your face over and over and over. And when I came up in art school, it was always about how unique and how do you make it your own. Where is your niche or your pocket? And I know a lot of times you'll create something unique, you put it out there, and everyone wants to rip it, to bite it, and appropriate without giving any homage or any credit to the person who actually created it.
Yeah.
And I was curious if you've had problems with bootleggers or if you've
Oh
had
yeah.
problems with
I think that's
and
just
your stance on that whole mess.
Of course, we get bootlegged, ripped all the time. There's this really famous story with us and American Eagle store stole our mascot, which is the Atom Bomb cartoon character, and they put him all over the boxers. And
Wow.
we went up against them.
Wow.
American Eagle? It's
Yeah,
crazy.
and they had like a crazy team of lawyers, and they're like, we're not backing down, and we're like, you have to take these down. They're like, no. And it was just Ben and I in a room. And granted, like we went to law school, so we knew a little bit of how to argue, but we
that's
couldn't
key.
pay for an attorney, so we would have these long phone calls with them. And in the end, I remember we were about to just relent, because I was just like, these guys are going to suck us of legal fees. They're going to just exhaust us, and we're not going to be able to. So they're just going to be able to sell this thing. And at this one point, they almost gave it to us like, how about this? We'll do you guys a favor. We'll license it from you guys. They were forcing a license on us. Like, we're going to use your logo. We'll give you guys 10%. You'll be happy with that, right? And we're like, we don't want you using it at all. And they were like, yeah, but you're going to
stole it.
Yeah, they straight up were like, yeah, we'll do you a favor and we'll give you a little bit of kickback. And we were like, what? Like, this is not, you straight up stole our logo. We were so bummed out. I remember we were on this one phone call with them and they had like 6 or 7 attorneys on their side. And Ben and I were like pretty hopeless. And, you know, we're a small brand at the time. We didn't have much. All we had was that character. Like, that was kind of like the entire weight of the company was based in this one design. And we're like, damn, like these guys just straight up hijacked our company in a way. And like, there's nothing we can do about it. And it's the big guy got over on us. And I remember just thinking, what do we have? Like, what are our advantages at this point? Which is, you know, to any great innovator, leader, like it's about being resourceful and turning around the negatives into positives, right? Mm-hmm. I was just like, number one, we're small. We have nothing to lose. So like, we can fight this thing. And number two, I have a voice. Like, I had a blog that had a big readership at the time. I had 1 million unique readers a month. It didn't translate into millions of dollars. It never translated into millions of dollars a month.
But that's a lot of years.
All I needed was the strength of our community, right? Yeah. The power of the people. And so I got back on the phone and I said, hey, look, we're not going to agree to whatever agreement, this compromise you guys are forcing upon us. What I will tell you is that if you go and continue selling these boxers, I'm going to write about it. And I'll tell you who reads my blog. It's all the people who are at the top of the trend pyramid. They're all the fashion trendsetters. They're the people on the front lines of culture and influence. And I said, I'm going to tell them the whole story. They're like, you can't do that. I'm like, why not? They're like, defamation. I'm like, well, the truth is a defense against defamation. So you can't say anything about that. And they were like, all right, hold on. We'll call you right back. They hang up the phone and Ben and I are looking at each other like just laughing like, okay, what a bunch of morons. And they call us back within like 5 minutes and they're like, all right, we're going to dump them. And they stopped doing it. And so like, you know, we didn't have the hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to spend on legal fees to fight this thing. But I, you know, I was just like, sue us, fine, sue us, do whatever you want. I was like, I'm going to write it anyways. Yeah, I was like, I got nothing. Sue me. So like, that's a strength when you don't have anything.
That's amazing.
You have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
You know, like if I had a lot of assets, like today I wouldn't be able to do that because they would be like, oh yeah, we're gonna sue you for all your money, and I would be scared because like I have money, I have things to lose. Yeah. But back then I had nothing to lose, so it was just like that's such a strength. Like I got nothing to lose. Like come at me. So you know that's like I guess that's a pretty good example of that. But it happens all the time. People rip from us all the time. 99.9% of the time, I honestly don't care. Because I'm better than my last design and I'm already on to the next one. Yeah. So if you're still like, if you're nipping at my heels and like you're copying something I did last season, that's totally cool. But like real recognize real, cream rises to the top. Like people know who's who's like doing things and progressive and like the most innovative. Yeah. And like, I just don't really care. I don't believe in real ownership of ideas either. Streetwear was built on this premise of parody and reappropriating other people's cultures, reappropriating other people's designs, ideas. Like that's the whole thing. It's like a very Warhol like parody. Let's remix everything constantly. Yeah. So it's none of these ideas were mine. You know, like everything I learned, I was inspired by other people who were inspired by other people. Like I love Supreme loves Polo loves, you know, like it just keeps going on.
There's really nothing new under the sun.
There's nothing new under the sun. Like we're all here just moving ideas around, and the only original part of what I offer the world is that it's me. Your right? Voice. It's my voice in my tone with my unique perspective of like my rich background, which is, you know, everyone has a very rich history, you know, like everyone's story is complicated, complex. I want to hear all of those. I want to hear all of everyone's origin stories because like it's all different. Everyone's been through hardships. Everyone has a story to tell. And like my story feels like this, but it's not to say it's better or worse than the next guys 100%. Or girls. And so like, that's what makes my brand unique. That's the only thing that makes my brand unique. Otherwise, I'm stealing and ripping everything that everyone else done before.
What was your favorite collab or like dream collab? Like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening.
Oh man, I loved working with Garfield. So I've done Garfield twice with Jim Davis. Wow. And Garfield because I'm an 80s kid.
Yeah.
I learned how to draw by reading Garfield comics.
Awesome.
I always say, like, I learned how to write. My humor came from Calvin and Hobbes, and I learned how to draw by reading Garfield.
That's amazing.
And so to be able to, when you're growing up in the 80s, like my clock was Garfield, my bed sheets were Garfield. I was like, I ate lasagna thinking I was Garfield. And then when you grow up and you're like, I actually get to work with the person who drew Garfield. It's
That's
a dream
amazing,
come true.
dude.
That is awesome.
But I have a lot of those. Like it's pretty.
And then there was another one
it's
too.
pretty
The Back to the
spectacular.
Future was pretty.
Back to the Future, my favorite film of all time, and to work with Bob Gale.
And you have
the
do you have a
co-creator.
DeLorean?
I have. I sold it 2 years ago now.
He had
but I had
his
it.
DeLorean to us.
I
Yeah.
had the
no
world's
way.
best DeLorean for like 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
It had 400 miles when I bought it. It was the best. It literally was the best. If you called the DeLorean company, they would say the best one belongs to Bobby.
Wow.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
That's a dream.
It was
That's
awesome.
Amazing.
It was awesome, but
It's
it's
like-
also like a very difficult and complicated car to drive.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
It's
I'm
like
sure.
it's so backwards.
So that's great. Back
Yeah.
to Back to the Future and Garfield. Holy
And Garfield.
shit.
Yeah.
It's like Ready Player One.
Yeah.
So Ready Player One, there was a Bigfoot truck in there. We did a Bigfoot project. Back to the Future. There's like so many parts. We're working with Lena Waithe on a project, so it's just for whatever reason that story keeps like coming back into my life.
And then how'd you get involved in the Bernie Sanders campaign?
So at that
You were
time,
speaking there. It's crazy.
Yeah, so I wrote part of his speech during that camp. His first
Wow.
LA speech when he came and he spoke at the Coliseum. So at that time, I was just being very open and receptive to like anyone that was running in the race.
Yeah.
I kind of put a call out there, like I was invited to go to a Hillary thing and listen to her and have a discussion there. And then
That's crazy.
after the Hillary thing, my friends were affiliated with the Bernie camp and were like, hey, we want you to meet somebody. And at that time, I mean, Bernie wasn't an unknown in
Yeah.
the political universe,
Yeah.
but in the greater mainstream understanding of what politics were, like people were like, Bernie who? Like,
Yeah.
who's this
Who's that old
like
guy?
senator from Vermont? So, I got
who
in.
marched for
Yeah.
human rights and
Yes.
civil rights.
I love Bernie. I think he's a great guy. Like, look, every politician has like things you can nitpick about him. I think Bernie's heart is in the right place always. He's
Yeah.
a really good person. And
He's running again too, I heard.
He is. He just
Okay.
announced that he's running again.
You might do another speech for him.
Yeah. So, anyways, short story long. I end up in a room. I don't know who I'm meeting. I really don't know who this person is. I'm sitting in a room. It's me, Sarah Silverman, one of the guys from The Doors, who I'm John
Wow.
Dryden, or I forget his name.
So random.
So just a few of us in the room, and I'm like, "What's going on?" Bernie comes in, and he's just like, "Look, I'm about to take the stage in an hour. We have to work on my speech." And so we all started helping him write the speech, which was an amazing moment because then he walked out to a crowd of 30,000 people, and he's literally like reciting some of the things that we had discussed about. Obviously, they were his ideas, his beliefs and tenets, but like I just helped formulate in a certain way, and like that was a pretty big moment for me.
That's
Yeah.
amazing,
That's
man.
pretty cool.
Hell
You know.
yeah. That's
Because
awesome.
you kind of kept your politics out of your business,
Not really. That's
but
actually,
not. But not. I mean, like not like in your face.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have beliefs that we put into our art.
Yeah. Exactly. Like you would, I didn't necessarily like back anyone. Like
Yeah.
I still didn't necessarily back anybody at that time. What I was trying to do is if people who are listening to this don't really know the history with our company, we are part apparel and we are also part media platform.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of editorial and we like to talk a lot about not just the culture, streetwear, but also things that I think are relevant and pertinent to youth. And so what I was doing at that time was talking as much about the political landscape at the time, putting that out there like for people to kind of come to their own decision.
Yeah.
And we used to make a t-shirt. We bring it back every few years. It says stay informed.
Yes,
and the
yeah.
messaging on the back is really like, look, other people are making decisions for you. It is your responsibility to step up and to be informed and to make your own decisions for yourself.
Yeah.
For the most part, I try not to judge people on the decisions that they make. I think there are certain things that I take a pretty hardline stance against, like racism, anything that actually creates fear or like physical violence or against someone's corporal body, like that kind of stuff is off limits to me. Like there's like, that's non-negotiable. There is no like multiple sides to racism. Like racism's racism. It's a non-negotiable for me. But there are other certain things that like I think we can have like lots of discussions around, and like that's what I want to provide. I want people to just think about politics. I want people to think about what other people
Be
go
aware
through.
what's happening around.
Be aware,
Yeah.
and then just come up with your own decisions. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be my decision. It doesn't have to be like my truth. But like as long as you know what it is that you believe, like I feel like I've done my job.
I love that.
And and to me too, like I think we as humans, we're always in a state of flux. We never know exactly what the truth is. Like my opinions change with new information. Like some of my opinions have changed from a year ago. Yeah. And like I think that's what it means to be human. But like I take an active role in defining what those truths are for me. Yeah. And I just want the same for everybody else. Like I love being proven wrong, like I read more from the other side, quote unquote, the other side, let's say like a Trumpy side or alt-right side. I read more of that stuff than I do stuff that supports my own beliefs.
Interesting.
Like I want to understand more about people who don't necessarily share my opinions, just so I have the empathy from where they came from.
Yeah.
I love that.
Get into their mindset.
Into their mindset. I think there's I think there is like pure hate. I think that is a thing. Yeah. I think that comes from like a very scary and dark place that like I don't quite understand.
Starts in the home, I think.
Insecurity.
It definitely starts in the home, and I don't think
fear.
it just starts with your parents. I think it started like for generations, and it's a really hard cycle to break. To be honest, it's in the culture, right? Like a lot of racism. It's like it's literally in the culture. It's in the way that they serve the food. It's in the way that it's just the nuances, right?
Yeah.
When you have kids, you see that. You see how
you see it all. It's crazy,
like
man.
how I talk to my
smoke clears. You see all kinds of shit.
Right, like
before.
the way I talk to my kids about race, and how my friends come over, or I have friends come around who are like, "Wow, I can't believe you talk to them." I'm like, you should all talk to your kids about race in this regard. Like, they know that they go to school and this kid is being treated differently than this kid. Like I'm having an issue this week with my kid is on a basketball team. Most of the kids are Asian. It's a couple black kids, and one of the black kids was kind of being bullied against for his race.
Oh, wow.
And that's like a very long discussion in our house. It's a very serious discussion, and it's an understanding of we, even as Asian people, can be white passing, and we don't even understand what it's like to be black. We don't know what it's like to be white. We don't know what it's like to be black, but put yourself as much as you can in that person's shoes, and just to try to have an understanding of what they must be going through.
Yeah.
And I think honestly, the black experience in this country, it sucks. Like I really do. Like, Chris Rock has this quote of, no one wants to be me and I'm rich. Like no one wants to be like, quote. Right? Like, yeah, man. And like, that's like a very hard truth. Like what black people have to go through is different from what Asians, Latinos, white people have to go through in this country. It's a very real thing. I'll never quite understand what it's like because I'm not black, and I'm not trying to pretend like I understand what that experience is like. But like, I've seen it my whole life with my own eyes, and like, I know it's different. Yeah. I know when I walk into a room and it's me and like a black friend, like I know how people feel about that black friend, as opposed to like how they, this weak Asian guy, like he's not going to do anything.
Women as well,
right? And women is right. So there's inherent differences in how culture treats. And so we, in our house, we try to just teach a lot of compassion, empathy.
Love that,
try
man.
Not to judge, you know.
So you don't have to agree, but at least try to be kind.
Exactly.
And have a discussion.
Exactly. Be open to the discussion. Be open to having your mind changed. Like, we'll all be better if like we're constantly having our minds changed. Like, that's why I think we have other people. Like, we're here for that reason.
Yeah. To learn.
Like, to learn, to be challenged, and to like, never thought about it that way. Never thought about it that way. Like, that's the best feeling every day of like, never looked at it that way before. I love doing that with the hundreds, with design. Like, give people clothes that people are like, I never thought about doing it that way before. Like, that's what we're here for, is to do that for other people.
Yeah, I feel like you probably know this, Ray, but from an outside perspective, and now especially having this conversation with you too, that what I know more about your background is that your brand has brought every type of person together. Like skaters, punk rockers, kids who are into hip hop, all different races. So that's an amazing accomplishment.
Which is something you never can plan for.
Yeah. It's not just for like one type of kid. And that's also what I loved about it. How like you love hip hop and hardcore and skateboarding, everything all combined. Yeah. And back for us growing up, like you said, it was all separated. Like on those Bones Brigades, it was only punk rock music in the background.
Yep.
And now it's like hip hop and everything's mixed. Everything's all together. And I feel like the hundreds is a big part of that.
I don't know.
Multicultural brand.
I don't know if we were a big part of it, but that's always been a big reason for what we. Yeah. I tell this story of when we were starting. Apparel brands like ours either fell into skate or urban. And there was the only one that was in between was a brand like LRG, and they used to call it Skirbin. Like LRG never called it that, but the media and the industry were like Skirbin. It's a mix of skate and urban. And what they were really saying was clothes for black people, or inspired by black culture, or like clothes for white people. So this was like DC and like Maddox and like skatey stuff, and
Zoomies,
Quicksilver and Zoomies, and then like urban was like up against the wall and against all odds, like those kinds of urban based stores, which really meant like black or black culture. And so when Ben and I were starting, look, Ben is he's Persian, Persian Jew from LA. Like, I'm a Korean American kid, and when stores would approach us and they'd be like, "Are you guys like, are you like skate or urban?" And I'm like, "Well, I skate," and he listens to rap, and they're like, "Well, are you for like white kids or like black kids?"
This is a real thing.
These were real questions.
Wow.
And so I was just like, not applicable. Like, look at me, I'm an Asian person. This guy's like Middle Eastern. Like, where do we fall into that?
That's crazy. You don't think about shit like that starting a company.
No, I mean, it's not like that anymore.
Race is such a big thing. Like,
and there was very little representation from people who look like Ben and I in our industry, and very much, look like the.
Keep talking. That's fine.
I think the racial landscape of America has changed so much within one generation, right?
Yeah.
It was like 80-something% white Protestant Christian American, or white Christian American, and now it's by the time I die, it'll be like 40% white. And so like just one generation, it changed. So I get it that like when we were starting, every brand was owned by white men. Like white men controlled the landscape, dominated the industry. Of course, it makes sense. Like all the representation, all the movie stars, like Tommy Hilfiger, like everyone that I looked up to.
Hip hop blew Hilfiger up too, though, man.
That's true. That's very much true.
Fat Farm.
Yeah. Yeah. Hilfiger had a big part of that. But, but now in 2019, when 3 out of 5 kids in America are brown, like look at the diverse landscape of like brand owners, people who are buying this stuff. Like,
hip hop's the number one music in the world.
Hip hop's the number one music in the world, right? Like 7 out of 10 Billboard number ones last year were hip hop songs. And that's going to happen more and more. High fashion is dominated by black designers, right? The guy at the top is Virgil Abloh at Louis Vuitton. He's a black designer. Sam Ross with a Cold Wall. There's like a lot of amazing representation. There's a lot of women I feel like are still not getting the enough representation in the way that they need. But
I agree too.
That I think is just like so deeply embedded in this culture, and
definitely a huge hurdle.
It's a harder one to break, to be honest. I think like men just, I don't know. It's been men's game, and they're not willing to let go. Like they're all down for like, oh, we're down for diversity or whatever, but it's just like, oh, I don't know if I feel comfortable with a woman running the country. It's just like, why? Because she's emotional, like that was always a complaint. Oh, women shouldn't run country because they're so emotional and like they're so like volatile. So it's like, right, like Trump, like the most emotional character I've ever seen in my life. Like
you had the woman's line, that was a great line. I like that line.
Yeah, we had a brand called Jennifer.
Yeah, I love that.
And the idea it was a conceptual based thing where women today are very much into men's streetwear. And which I think is weird because a lot of men's streetwear can be misogynistic and like misrepresentative of females. And so it was a women's brand that was like gender neutral. It could be worn by, it was just hoodies, like oversized hoodies, like anyone can wear, but it was for women. And instead of like saying it's a men's brand that women can wear, it was a women's brand that men could wear.
I love that. Yeah. It's pretty much safe to say, I think, that Kanye West put Adidas kind of back on the map and made him a threat to Nike.
Oh, yeah.
He made a threat to Nike,
100%. 100%.
It made Nike have to step their shit up too.
Yes, that's a real thing.
That's a huge thing.
I don't think anyone would disagree with that. Yeah.
And my one more question I was going to ask you, but I don't really think I already got the answer. You ever had a plan B? But I feel like all the education you had, and everything, all the knowledge you have, I feel like if I was you, I wouldn't worry about anything. If something ever happened with the hundreds, I feel like you have such a great education to fall back on. Whether you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. But at the same
you ever nervous?
time,
did you ever feel like quitting or like, oh my god? Like,
no.
How much longer?
I never. There was no backup plan. Like
I love that, man.
There's no backup plan
That's
for
pure
this.
Passion.
Of course. Look, for the most part, I'll probably find a way to survive on this planet. Like again, I have the luxury of living in America. I'm a certain class. Like I have some money in the bank, so like I'm probably not going to starve.
You're smart.
I have an education. Like I know how to. I feel like more than academic intelligence, I'm emotionally intelligent enough to be able to deal with other people, which like all successful people are. Sorry, my alarm was just going off. But yeah, like there was no backup plan for this, and there still is not. Like
do you worry about the future?
In terms of like my career?
Yeah, just like the hundreds or just like
No. I'm very grateful to be able to get to where we are today.
Yeah.
You know, like I for the most part, I feel like, you know, we can largely shape what our future looks like. But yeah, I mean, do I worry about the future in terms of like climate change, AI, civil war, and
AI,
the recession? You know, like
yeah,
that stuff worries me too. But then again, going back to something I was talking about earlier, those are all things that futurists and experts promise us are on the horizon. And they've also always gotten it wrong, right? There's also the same climate change report written in the 90s, was a little different, by the same United Nations report that said like in the next 15 years, you know, we're not going to be around or something like that, you know? And so like there's always reports, there's always things like we have to try, we have to do better, we have to like clean up the environment. It's an absolute must, but the world could end tomorrow. Like a meteor could just hit, you know, like something we don't know what's in like 95% of the ocean, right? Like we only know like the top layer. Yeah. Like maybe there's like the city of Atlantis down there. That's like the future for everybody. Yeah. Like who knows? Maybe an alien comes from outer space and it's just like, come with me over here.
Yeah.
Like no one really saw the internet coming. Some people kind of understood, but like no one understood like the true ramifications and mechanics and the mechanism of like what the internet was, right?
Yeah.
And that was very recent. Like no one knew that Uber was going to be a thing. The access economy was going to become a thing. Like
Amazon.
No one saw Amazon becoming the, you know, Jeff Bezos kind of maybe understood, but I don't think he understood the power of what that was. And so like all these things keep changing. I never thought we would have a black president. We had one for 8 years. I never thought Donald Trump would be president. He's been in office for 2 years.
True.
So like no one up until the night before, most experts agreed that Trump would never be president. Then the next day he was president. So, you know, you can only give so much credence to what the experts say and the predictions because everything that they understand is based on what happened in the past. And that's the beauty of life is we never know what's happening in the future. Yeah. And so like there's so much opportunity. I don't think we really need to be worried. We need to just work hard on what we have to do today. We got to fix the environment today.
Yeah.
You know, like
do what you can do.
And do what you can do today and like not be married to this idea that like, dude, the whole world's going to fall apart and AI is going to kill us all.
It's hard. It's hard right now. I want to check out the news every day, but I also want to like live my life but not get caught up in like the insanity happening. It's so hard to balance that right now.
It's a hard balance.
It's like
a dark world, man.
It's like a pendulum swinging though. It's like, you know, you have Trump and his hatred. But on the flip side, do you see the candidates, the people who are coming out who want to run for president? You got Cory Booker.
Cory
Booker.
Yeah, Cory Booker's in the mix.
A newer guy who had street hits out on him.
Yeah. We have like some really the Dem race is super crowded and interesting. Like I think even on the Republican side, they're obviously choosing Trump. But I think the independent candidates that come out, like I'm not down with Howard Schultz from Starbucks as president, but like just the fact that this guy is in the race is just like, what the hell else is going to happen over the next year? So it's entertainment.
Nothing shocking anymore.
Nothing shocking. It's all
how
entertainment.
We got heckled. You billionaire.
Yeah. Like how dare you? Like,
you're taking votes away if you entitled billionaire asshole.
Really tripping on him?
Yeah, they're tripping on him.
They heckled
him. It's like,
it's a crazy time, man.
It is crazy. I've been talking to Tulsi Gabbard, who is a congresswoman out of Hawaii, and she I think is a really strong candidate for the Democratic Party. There's some things in the past that I've been able to talk to her about. Her stance on gay marriage wasn't she didn't support it up until let's say a decade ago, like 7 years ago. So she came up like in a very conservative household. She's Hindu, so like, you know, there's that part of it that isn't the best. But again, like every politician has weird things, you know. She met with Assad. Like there's like certain things about her that aren't the best. But I think overall, I think she's a very strong candidate. I think she's someone that people should be considering and looking at. I think she can bridge the divide between both parties. And I would say like look at her. I think Cory's good. Cory also has like a lot of Wall Street ties, which are a little like, you know, of course, you know.
I don't even know who to trust anymore. I don't
know. I mean, it's hard. Like politics is weird, you know. And we've never
Bobby hundreds for.
I would never put my family through it. Family's the most important thing to me. I want to put my family through that, the scrutiny. Yeah. But it's hard because we have so much visibility into the process, right?
Yeah.
Politics have always been corrupt. People in power have always been corrupt. Like that's nothing new.
But they weren't tweeting about it.
They weren't tweeting about it, and we didn't have the internet. We didn't have like so much access to all this information to know like really how bad and corrupt they really were. But You know, like it's a really nasty process. There's like a lot of ugly parts of it, and like when you really get in there, you're like, yeah, I don't want to trust anybody, which is totally fair.
Yeah.
But like also ignorance is bliss, and like maybe we shouldn't have known some of this stuff, you know, to be able to lead our lives. You just said it yourself. You're like,
Yes.
I just want to lead my life, but
Turn
like
off.
my brain space is consumed by like all this information, negative stuff. And
on my
like
phone all day, different things come up, different negative things about the
Yeah.
president, what he said today, what he tweeted today, who he fired
Exactly.
today, who he pissed off. Like,
it's like we're not meant to handle that amount of information.
Mm-hmm.
Robots are meant to handle it, right? Like this is where the robots are beating us.
Yeah.
Is that all of that information is meant for robots to handle, but it's not meant for humans to handle. Like we have to be concerned about our general welfare, our mental health, our children, our balance and stuff like that. And so
It's hard.
if it's incredibly hard, and in fact it's impossible to find a balance. So this is a huge problem. Like I'm holding my mobile phone, but
yeah,
this
it's
is
a really
this
huge
is
problem.
a huge problem. Yeah.
It's such a positive tool to express yourself, to spread positivity, to promote a brand,
Yeah.
to
To
sell
reach
something. But then the rest of it's just like these dark rabbit holes of just negativity and just like
Yeah.
everybody has an opinion, everybody has a comment,
Yeah.
everybody.
Twilight Zone episode where you know what everyone's thinking because they'll tweet it.
Oh my God, that's exactly what it is.
It's like the guy goes crazy. I can hear everyone's thoughts. I
Yeah.
can hear everyone's thoughts. It drives me crazy.
That's-
That was in the 60s.
There you go. They predicted it.
They predicted
They
it.
knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, they knew that this shit would drive people crazy.
But I think,
crazy,
you know,
man.
you have to do your best to stay focused on, I think the biggest problem why all this stuff is happening on social media and all these arguments and all this division and hate is that we are trying to have conversations out of context with complete strangers that are on different planes and they don't see our face and everything's misaligned, right? And I don't think it's meant for, although social media has fooled us into thinking that we're actually like communicating and like genuinely connecting with an audience, it's not true. Like what we're doing is we're all shouting out into the atmosphere and
Yeah.
no one's actually listening. So like
Yeah.
you say something, it's not connecting with this guy and he's saying something and this girl's responding over here and nothing's aligned. So I think the response to everything that's happening in that phone is to just remember to have conversations like this.
Yeah.
I can see your face. I can
love
read
this.
your emotions.
Yeah.
You know, like, look, like you could be, you're not, but you can be like an Aryan, alt-right, like neo-Nazi sitting in front of me. And I think we would actually have a pretty civil conversation. I'll be completely disagree. But like, I think because we read the nuances of like, what do we care about most? What every American cares about most is taking care of their family, providing
100%.
food for their family, happiness, their jobs. That's the most important thing. We
Yeah.
can all agree
It's
on
all
that.
people want.
Yeah.
It's all people
There's
want.
100%.
There's a
So
common
we can
ground.
begin there. Like you
Start
love your
there.
kids. I love my kids too, man. Like I don't want my kids, like I don't want them to die. I don't want my kids to
Yeah.
die either. I want them to have a job. Mine too. Let's
Yeah.
begin. We already have commonality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the other stuff like we have to work through. It's like differences of philosophies and whatnot, but like that's not what makes us human. But you're not going to see that stuff. You're not going to be able to deal with it and navigate it through social media. It's
Not at
never
all,
going to
man.
come up.
No, it's
You're never
fucking
going to see
draining,
it.
man.
Yeah.
That's
So
why.
I just do my best to like try to keep the arguments off of online as much as possible. I take them in the DMs if
Yeah.
I really I'm having a serious discussion with someone.
Yeah.
If not, like I try to meet with people in person
Yeah.
and talk to them. And
Same.
like I care about the people immediately in my community, my family, my friends and family, people I deal with every day. Like honestly, I'm not meant to have a 5-minute like hate spewed conversation with a guy who lives in Kentucky on a farm who like grew up with racist parents. Like we are so culturally misaligned. It will take me flying out there, sitting down with the person, spending
Yeah,
a week with them,
face to face.
living in their shoes, seeing how they eat, listening to the stories of like what their grandparents had to go through for me to have like true empathy for them. So like it's not
100%.
going to happen over Twitter or Instagram.
No.
That conversation is not going to happen.
Never.
We're just culturally too far apart. But in LA, like this is my culture and community. Like my kids, my family, my friends, my cousin, like everyone here, when I drive around, like we all are from the same culture. Like we have immediate access to each other. Like we
Yeah.
have to start within the communities first, I believe. And then, you know, like
work your way out.
work your way out from there. But you know, it's not meant for us to have these like look, if you just drive like 40 minutes east of here, it's a completely different world.
Yeah.
100%,
You know,
man.
so like we have to forget like not everyone lives in our bubble, and because we all live in these digital silos where we think that like everyone thinks and breathes and acts and shares our opinions with things, it's like it's not true. Just like go across the street, your neighbor lived a completely different life. Like you have to talk to them.
And living in California is an extreme bubble. It's like living in a different planet.
Oh, totally
know?
different planet. Southern California, LA especially, then Southern California, then California in general.
Yeah.
We are in a completely different
Well,
planet.
we're lucky to live here, though.
Oh man, so lucky. Best place.
I could never live in anywhere in the winter anymore or anything like that.
No, man, it's like perfect today. I'm in a t-shirt.
Yeah.
It's like polar vortex everywhere
Well,
else.
actually, have any final questions? Because nobody has to go. Any questions?
No, actually, it
It was great. This is a lot of information.
Thank you.
A lot of stuff I didn't know about you. That I love you even more now.
Oh, I love you too.
I really do. I appreciate
I didn't cry.
being part of your life. No, I know.
It's funny
I appreciate being part of your life and me being part of my life.
You realize how there might be between me and you might be a generational little gap.
Little bit.
But we've shared so much of this. There's so many commonalities, especially how we came up with punk rock, skating, hip hop, and that was in early '80s.
Yeah.
And it's like, and we were running through that. We didn't know where we fit in, and we were bouncing off of, we had people in this crew, people in that crew, people on this side, and it's interesting to hear you talk about how you came up and
I think every person on this planet, more than anything, they want to connect, right? Because when you connect with another person, it validates that you are important, that you exist, and that like you actually have 2 feet on the like. I think the worst part about the internet and what it does is it actually makes us feel more disconnected. And when you feel disconnected, you feel like you don't really belong on this planet. And we all want to feel like we belong. We all want to feel like 100%. We have a purpose and we have a role here, and like we made some kind of mark on the planet. We're not just here by accident.
Yeah.
And I think for people like us, we found that connection and identity in punk or skate. For 100%. Me, it was like streetwear and clothing. Yeah. But like we're always searching for community and belonging, just to know like I should be here in this place. Like I'm important. Like there's value in my life, instead of me just floating out into the ether. And the problem. But I'm just saying, like the problem with Instagram is that like you're floating in space. I heard a definition once of hell, which I don't know if it's biblical or not, but it's like a place where it's a T.S. Eliot quote. Actually, it's not from the Bible, but hell is a place where nothing connects with nothing. Like, and I've heard descriptions of that, of like hell isn't really like a place of like fire. It's a place where really like you're just floating and like you don't actually like aren't connected to anything. And
that makes a lot of sense.
I think, we presently live in a digital hell where we're not actually connected to anyone. We were just hopelessly lost in this digital space. And so it's important in real life to step away from that and to actually connect with the people around us and have conversations. Right. You're like having like real connections, right?
Yeah. You think the internet ruined streetwear, like social media and stuff like that, ruined streetwear in a sense?
Yeah, I think the internet, social media ruined everything, and then also like made it what it is.
It's a good thing too. Yeah.
It's there's pros and cons, it took like a lot of the magic and fun out of it, and it made it accessible, which like a lot of the beauty of streetwear was that it was hard to get.
It created bots.
Yeah. This is the worst part of streetwear. I mean, the worst part of what the internet did is streetwear. Streetwear, the idea of streetwear, it's very luxury, high fashion based, which is you want to wear something no one else has. Okay. And, it's all those people like us that want to feel special, that we're not like everybody else. Like we don't buy our clothes in like a mall or department store. We don't buy we don't wear what our mom buys us. Like we want to wear something. When we go to school, people are like, whoa, where'd you get that? You want to feel special.
Totally. You want to stunt your shit.
You're stunting. Like no one else has these. And the way that you had to do that before was you had to travel. So streetwear made it so like Supreme only sold out of their store in New York. So
always go to that store at skate shop.
Bape used to only sell at the store in Japan. Like there was a skate shop. There's a skate shop in your town. Like that was you had to drive. I had to drive to the other side of town for this shop called Rebel in Riverside that was run by a rapist. And like these are the hurdles that you had to jump through to get a piece of clothes that no one else at your school was wearing. Everyone else was wearing Gap or like Polo or whatever, and like you're like, I'm wearing like a Think skateboard shirt, or like Acme, like
Yeah.
whoa, like how did you get that? Like, oh, I jumped through these hoops, but it wasn't like you weren't priced out of it. Like it was still $19.99.
Yeah.
You just had to jump through the hoops.
Yeah.
You can still go to Supreme, buy like a $28 t-shirt. At the time, I think it was like $24 for a Supreme t-shirt. I could be wrong, but like you just had to make the effort to go there. Or if your dad was traveling there on business, or you had a cousin who lived in Jersey, you can call and be like, hey, can you go there and like get me this shirt? And like you can pay for it, and it could happen. Now, because of the internet, because of e-commerce, because of eBay and auction sites and reseller sites and StockX and whatever, you have access to everything. So the geographical barrier isn't the hurdle anymore. Now what the hurdle is getting economic. And now it's a class thing. Yeah. And class differential is like the worst part of what streetwear has become. And it's all about like, you can't afford this. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's important, which is when we were growing up, it wasn't about it wasn't about how expensive or like,
You said the same thing about going to a record store to find a record.
Yeah.
Sifting through all the records and find this record. You have this thing. Check the thank you list, read the lyrics, and find what other bands they shout out. And then you find out about more bands. It was this community thing where you had to actually leave your house to do it and find it.
Part of something.
The searching for it and fucking.
And now, it's about like, I paid X amount of dollars to buy this record, but I haven't. And you're like, wow, you're cool. You spent $5,000 on a record. That's so cool. It's just like, that was never cool, man. It was never cool to be rich.
No,
like no one wanted to be the rich kid.
No.
I was like the wackest, nerdiest kid.
Yeah.
And now like everyone who runs the world is just like the rich kid. And I'm like, no.
Yeah, no.
You went through no struggle. You have nothing to offer. You're not original. Like everything was spoon-fed.
Zero
to you.
passion. Just pure about the money.
Yeah. I want like the grimy, dirty shit.
So it won't be like that ever again, I guess, really.
Yeah.
As of right now, I don't think so.
Solar flare takes out.
You never know.
Just like our kids will never know what it's like to have no social media, like not have a phone on tour and none of that stuff. It's just like
you never know.
Well, Bobby, I really appreciate your time. I know you have to skedaddle. It's Friday at 5:15. I want to thank you for being my friend. Thank you for letting us do a collaboration with you from the very beginning.
It's coming.
We've been friends for a long time. I don't even know how we met, how many years ago. It's been a long time.
Long time.
Before the brand, or like before the brand started, I guess.
Yeah.
And then also for using your voice and your platform to help change this planet and make it a better place and inspire people in a positive way. You're an amazing writer, designer, photographer. Everything. You're a well-rounded human, and I learned a lot about you today, and you're really smart. And there's not many people I know that are really smart, so I'm honored to call you my friend.
Thanks, Rusty.
Yeah, and you can be a lawyer, too.
Yeah.
Awesome. But, thank you so much for the podcast.
So
I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's going to be kind of like my MO, where after I do an interview, I wait, and I realize, oh, shit, I had more questions for them. So usually there's going to be some extra stuff at the end of all my episodes. It's kind of like the theme of what I've been doing. I'm sorry, I'm just a spaz, and I don't get all the questions I need to, and sometimes I just like OCD and bug out on what I could have, should have asked them, and I get them back on the phone.
All right, so Bobby, the reason I want to get you back on the phone is because we didn't touch upon how we met. I'm trying to think how we met, where we met. I know it was over 10 years ago. I just don't know if I met you in Cali when I moved here or something, or...
Yeah, how did we meet? I think my earliest memory of you was there was a show at like the Montalban or something, or like some type of Nike event.
Yes.
Something like that. Like maybe it was like when Pacquiao had like a thing there, but it was 10 plus years ago, like 12, 13 years ago. And I remember, and I knew that you were around the scene just because we had a lot of mutual friends, like like Dom and guys like that. So I knew you were around, but I remember I was standing next to you and I was just like, we were just watching the show, and I said, oh my God, I said, hey Toby, I'm a big fan. I'm still a big fan. And I was like, nice to meet you. I'm Bobby, and I'm starting this brand, and you were like super nice and supportive, which is how the anecdote always goes with you.
Thank you.
So, yeah,
that's crazy. And then how soon into the hundreds did we do that collab? Because I feel like we might.
Oh my God, I feel like it was immediate, because I don't know how I reached out to you after that, because I don't remember if we exchanged information. Maybe I'd asked one of our mutual friends, or like we had like MySpace or something back then. I don't even remember.
Friendster.
But Friendster. Zenga or something. I don't know, but I remember I asked, I just reached out and I said, hey, look, like, would you ever do a collab? And back then collabs were like very easy and simple, like much easier than they are now. And it was just like, hey, like, you want to do this? Let's just do it. And like a few weeks later, we just had a shirt, and it said "People change, but songs remain," which is just like a lyric that's always stuck with me. I've always loved that lyric.
It was crazy for me is that, like, that's off like the Go record, which is, for me personally, not my fave, but I know a lot of people like that record. A lot of people found out about H2O during that record and that touring cycle. So to have to have you come back with those lyrics, we were pretty stoked on that. To be honest, because we didn't think it would be something from that album. So that was pretty awesome. And Adam still actually has that shirt in plastic bag still. Which is
really?
Yeah, it's like a fucking ancient artifact. Yeah, so then fast forward to now, we did the collab for our 25th anniversary a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And for some people, you know, we did the original collab. That was before social media, so people that knows we were friends, and we did that shirt. So we were like, oh, the hundreds in each show. Like, how does that happen? People know we're friends, but just for like history fact, we did originally one, you know, over 10 years ago with you guys.
Yeah. There's a really long history, and even that first one sold out, and ever since then we've been talking about, like, we should do something, and I like that we took some time to, like, make sure it was right, because the second collab that just recently dropped, I feel like it blew the doors off, and
Dude.
Like, it was perfect with the event, and we threw this huge show in our backyard here at our offices in our warehouse, and had like a little skate demo, and Chris Cole came out, and H2O played, and then it also came full circle because I've watched Max grow up, and so that was Max's second or third performance with his band Rend, right?
Yes.
It was like,
yeah.
so like to have them open and then to have you perform, and like I just remember standing out there that night watching. It was like starting to kind of rain near the end, and you know, there was just like hundreds of people, and it was so positive, and like I just felt like one of those moments where everything really came full circle. Like, wow, look at what I've been able to do for like, I have the best job.
Yeah.
Like, is what I was thinking, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like, I get to do this for a living. This is like my entire life summed up in a night.
Yeah, it was a beautiful event. It was awesome seeing actually Ben there too, and Ben was like smiling and shit, and like he was stoked, and like the diverse group. And I said, you know, it was so many young kids there with their parents and little babies, and fucking dude, it was
they were like kids who grew up with your band and like with our brand, and now they had children, and the children were at the show, and you know, that's like, it's kind of like how hard of both of us work. Like you were just saying that you're about to leave on tour like 22 dates in a row, and you know, like, I feel like I'm in the middle of a weird little tour myself. It's like we work really hard for moments like that. Like, that's the milestone that I'll remember, you know, like when I'm on my deathbed, I'll look back and be like, dude, that was so sick that we did that.
I'm honored to be part of that too. It was super fun. It was, I mean, I'm sure you guys are going to have more shows there in the future.
No, of course.
I'm sure it's not the last one. And yeah, you just mentioned like your little book tour now. I went and saw you at Barnes & Noble last week. That was amazing turnout and vibes and conversation with Wale. Let's talk about the book real quick. So the book's out right now, correct?
Yeah. The book dropped a week ago. It's called This Is Not a T-Shirt.
Yes.
It's doing really well. I mean, shocking. Like, I knew my audience would buy it, but it's kind of it's like transcended that. Now it's become like an Amazon bestseller. It's number 3 in new releases. It's a top 50 book overall on Amazon this week. So that's like, I mean, my book is next to like Orwell's 1984. You know, like
shit.
it's just, it's
Congrats.
crazy. It's kind of like become its own thing, and that's really exciting to see. But yeah, we had an LA stop at Barnes & Noble, sold out. San Francisco was even bigger at Green Apple Books, supporting the local indie store, and that sold out, and getting a lot of good press, and like GQ, and you know, the LA Times put me in the Sunday paper. Dude. That was really fun, and NPR I've been on a couple times now, and you know, it's just like it's like overwhelming. Like I finally have had a moment to kind of breathe the last 2 days, but like it almost felt like I was campaigning, like I was running for office. You know, like I never like you're in music. Music operates around, you know, first week sales, and you kind of rally up your troops and you get the word out. Like, clothing doesn't work like that. Like, we have seasonal jobs. We have like literally weekly drops, like t-shirts drop here and there. And we tell people about, I just like tell people, hey, by the way, we made this collaboration, or we made this hat, or we made a pair of shoes, and we just post it, and I just move on with my day. It's like, if they buy it, they buy it. But this was like 2 years in the making, like six months of promotion, like personal emails, like personal phone calls, like literally like canvassing, I felt like I was doing. So that was really different for me. Like in clothing, we don't really get to experience that. And for the first time, I felt like what it was almost what it was like to be like a musician, you know, or like
on tour,
a person, like a, you know, like I was just like, this is probably the closest I'll ever being to like a rock star, like where I'm on tour and I'm promoting something. So it's cool. It was cool to like live that moment.
It's like you put your first album out.
Mm-hmm. It really is.
You
and
know
like
what I mean?
everyone always says like that first album's so great because you worked on it your entire life. And like, it really is. Like I worked on that. I'm 39 years old. I feel like I worked on that book for 39 years, you know? And so
Yeah.
for the last week, it's felt like I've been able to attend my own funeral in a way, like how nice everyone's been, and people coming around writing these like glowing testimonials about me. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God, it's like I died, but people are like saying it while I'm alive. It's so cool.
It's fucking awesome. So do you feel like you had a I don't know, you just feel like totally relieved now it's out, and then now are you probably thinking about a second book?
Yeah, of course I'm thinking about second books and third books and fourth books. And I told you already, like this book is being optioned for television, which I'll be able to announce soon. This is like probably the only place that I've really announced it.
Wow.
So like that is a scoop that like we're getting ready to announce. And like TV, film, you know, screenwriting is definitely something that I want to involve myself more in the future, and more books more than anything. Like I just love to write. Yeah. I'm looking at maybe like I can do everything from like I have a stack of short stories that are just ready to go that I might put out late next year to tide me over for like a bigger, heavier book that I think is going to come later than that. And I want to get into fiction too. So I want to write like fictional stories, like young adult stories. I want to write like The Outsiders, but for today, like that's one of my goals.
Wow.
So
that's fucking awesome. And me and Adam, Adam's a better reader than I am. I'm a really shitty reader. So me and Adam bought the audiobooks for our 12-hour flight on Friday.
Thank you.
I'm psyched. I'm psyched for that, man. Like I really.
Thank you.
I remember like we were leading up to that show. You were like every single day doing all the talking for that book, man. That's crazy, man. Yeah.
I've been that audiobook. I guess I never really appreciated what goes into that, but it was 2 weeks of 4 to 5 hours a day straight, just reading a book in a stuffy recording booth. And, that was the hardest thing I've ever done. Again, I felt like what it was like to be a recording artist.
Yeah.
You guys are used to doing that. Yeah. Losing your voice and doing cuts over and over and over and over and like another take. And I was not prepared. Like, I don't like talking. Like, I love talking, but like not that much. Jesus Christ.
I know you mentioned that the Barnes and Noble thing too, about like what you want people to get out of the book. And, you know, you talk about the highs and lows of the hundreds, the beginnings, the highs and successes and the roller coaster ride and stuff.
I think we're often sold business stories are often about like, oh, we had this big break and then, you know, we're billionaires and look how much of a success we are. It's like, no, my life and career has not been like that at all. You know, and I think like mine is more of a realistic story of like, I've had some breaks, I've had some successes, I've had a lot of I've had more failures than success. Yeah. You know, like I make enough money to survive and you know, I'm comfortable, but like I'm not like balling out of control. Yeah. You know, and like I think that's like an important story to promote in the business world of like, can you also tell a business story about like just working hard, doing what you love, taking care of your community, taking care of your family and your friends, you know, like not like making so much money they become a cancer to society, like, you know, giving back, creating good stuff that you're proud of, like all that is like, that's a more real business story. That's like a more like important story. I feel like that needs to be told, but it's not as sensational and sexy as like, I have $1 billion valuation and I'm on the cover of a magazine. Like, you know, that's usually what people aspire to, but it's like, that's not even real. Like I know all those people that have those kinds of stories and the PR spins it a certain way. It's like, that's not real, and they're not necessarily happy, and they're not necessarily making a lot of money either. So like, what if we just like get back to this place of, let's do something we love. Let's make enough money to survive and to keep the dream alive. And like, that's like, I feel like a much more fulfilling life.
100%. Like, same with musicians. Like, you get to do what you love, create what you want to create. You're basically your own boss, you and Ben.
Yeah.
And you get to do what you love, and you're comfortable doing it. And I think that's the key to, loving life. I also think it's the key to positivity, health. When there's some people that, work jobs they hate and they have to do it to survive and, and feed their kids. And, I respect that too. But I know there's a lot of people like that who are totally miserable, and they look way older than we do because they're doing stuff they're doing stuff they don't want to do, but they have to do it, and they're not happy doing it. And that sucks. And it's like, I feel like everybody has an opportunity to choose their own path and do what they want to do and really focus on it if they stick to it and not give up and do what they love and be happy. And I feel like me and you were very lucky to be able to do that, especially in the business that we're both in. And like I said, I didn't sell a million records, and you're not a zillionaire, but you do it because you love it, and you can still do it because of all the hard work you put into it and the success you get out of that. And success isn't just based off of money. It's based off of happiness and health and your family and, and loving to go to work every day and creating.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. I feel like that's the key. People always ask, like, how are you so positive? Well, I have a good wife, and I get to do what I love, and I love what I do. And it's not about the money. It's about having fun with my friends and touring and being creative with best friends, and all the people you work with are like your family. And I don't know. I just think that's extremely important because life is really short, and it's like a lot of people spend their time, I don't know, just not being happy and doing things just to make money. And money's not the root of at all of happiness. I think money's a lot, truly evil a lot of times. So, man. So
money's important. Money's important to survive and put a roof over our heads and to stay warm and to eat and have sustenance. But like beyond that, like that's all really human needs to be happy.
Yeah.
Like
100%.
Everything else is fleeting. Like we just need the bare minimum, and when we need some people to love us and stay connected to, and for us to love them, and then like everything else is icing on the cake, man.
Yeah. When we announced the collab, people were like, oh, the prices and don't forget your roots and all this bullshit. And it's like, the Hundreds and H2O are both built on hardcore punk ethics, and both have done it DIY style and are still doing it. And that's more than, like you said like, there was something about streetwear. It's like about fashion, not streetwear. He had two great quotes that I love. The one is like, your work is more important than your reputation, which I think is incredibly true. And then you said something, I don't know where you said it at. It was about without the streetwear, it's just fashion or something like that, right? Is that something?
Oh, yeah. I say that streetwear without culture is just fashion. And
100%.
There's nothing wrong with fashion. Like I love fashion too, and I love clothing and I love design, but streetwear is a whole different thing where it's really about like culture and community, and like it's supported by like design and it's supported by clothes, and like that's the merchandise and that's the communication device that we need to kind of bridge the communities. But more than anything, like streetwear is just like a reason for us to come together. And if it happens to be shoes, that happens to be a cool t-shirt, awesome. But it's really not just about fashion. Like fashion exists on its own and it's awesome, but we're not a fashion thing.
And you can also say that like wearing hardcore band t-shirts you can only get from the bands, and go to the concerts and support them and wear their t-shirts. That's something that could be streetwear too, because these are bands and you're helping them survive by buying the merchandise and wearing it representing your favorite bands. And it's not something you could get at the tip. Well, back in the day, like get at the mall, you know what I mean? So it's like you're wearing these shirts and these designs of these bands and your favorite skate companies because you love those brands, and you skate on the skateboards and you love those bands, you support them. And I think people get it mixed up about like, we talk about fashion before passion and all that stuff. And, for me, that's our song. What Happened was about people only wearing the clothes and the outfits and thinking that you can have this look and you can be you could be punk or emo because you dress like that. But that song's saying it's more than just an outfit. It's like, it's in your heart. It's how you live your life. It's what you believe in. It's, you know what I mean? It's like your ethics. It's all that. It's not before you could walk into a Hot Topic and be punk from head to toe. It wasn't, you could just be a normal looking guy at a hardcore show. You know, you didn't have to have a mohawk. You know, everybody came from different backgrounds, and we all got connected in this kind of weirdo outcast family. So I don't know. Some people get our song twisted. So like when they saw the collab, like, oh my god, you forgot your roots and this and that and brands. But like, it was never about that. It's like we're supporting each other, and we both come from the same backgrounds. It's like I don't know.
I love that. Like I really actually appreciate like that type of criticism and that type of passionate, like, anger over us, over you working with a clothing company, and a big clothing company too, like we're not like a small like garage label, and like that's like the spirit of punk. Like it's good that the kids are out there questioning, like, just don't sell out, like holding the bands accountable, like they don't want to see their favorite small time band like become this corporate monster, and I think you've done a really good job of navigating that and not being that, but also like being like open to working with people who you align with like value wise, which is at the end of the day, like I'm a company, like I definitely have like a big clothing corporation, but it's still just it's owned by me, like it's owned by Ben, and like we don't have any investors or backers. Like I drive, my wife has a car and I have a car, and that's it. Like we're not like we're not on a yacht or anything, and I don't feel like I'm exploiting anyone. Like we're making, we have a good business here, and but at the end of the day, like I'm just like one of them. And I would say the same thing if I were 16 and saw my favorite band working with a clothing company. I'd be like, just be careful, like like don't sell out on me. And like I love that. Like I think that's why punk is so cool. Yeah,
but and to me and to H2O, it's like, oh, we're gonna do a shirt with Ben and Bobby, your friends. We don't look at you as a massive corporation. And also, there's people that because of your collabs with like Judge, Bold, Gorilla Biscuits, Chain of Strength, H2O, all the bands you've done, there's people that don't know anything about us that because they love the hundreds, all of a sudden they're checking out all of our bands because you're making this merchandise. It was funny 100%. Because when you posted the last thing we did, somebody's like, who's those dudes on the back of the shirt? And some kids like, that's a band H2O, that's a picture on the back of the shirt. To them, it looked like just like a new hundreds merchandise drop. But then other kids can look into it and be like, oh shit, there's a band called H2O or Gorilla Biscuits or Judge, and it's 2019, and if we're being able to like have more people find out about our music, it's awesome. We're all helping each other, and it's like that's the whole fucking point. You're putting out shit that inspired you, you know what I mean, and you're helping the bands that inspired you, maybe get to a new audience and people can check us out. Like I don't know.
100%.
Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. This episode is amazing. We did it a couple months ago, and so like I said earlier, it's like right now I'm in the middle of my chronological order of my life. I'm in New York hardcore right now, and so I'm dropping our episode today because your book is out, and I want to support my friend Bobby, and so this will be in the middle of New York. And
tomorrow, I didn't know you're doing that.
Yeah, awesome. Tomorrow I'll get back into New York hardcore, but we're gonna drop this now because your book's out this week, and my friends have got me for like family. Wait, I'm all hyper right now. My friends have got me for like family. I'm so tired too. And so we're going to look out for each other, and this episode's coming out as soon as I get this to Joe and he gets it together. We'll have it out today, so I'm stoked.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate that.
And I appreciate everything you've done for the culture, for skateboarding, for punk rock, for hardcore, for everything, man. Like you're a man in the mix of all of it, you know what I mean? And you never forgot where you came from, and I respect that.
And I'm ultimately forever curious and excited about youth culture, and I feel like the kids always have the answer, so I'm always listening to the kids.
Yeah, man, the kids will have their say, and they still do.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Bobby, hope I'll see you soon, man.
Thanks, Toby.
All right, brother, love you.
Bye.
Bye. Hey, guys, thanks for listening. Please rate, review, subscribe. If you haven't subscribed yet to this podcast, please do that. And whatever platform you are listening to this on, I'm glad you found me. You can rate me and review me on there also. So thank you guys sincerely for the support. I cannot wait for you guys to hear the next one.